Welcome to the Wrestling Fan of Wrestling Show. I'm the big beefy boy, Shaz Beef, and today I'm joined by Quadruple Bypass members, all the marks. We'll start off with my fellow old buck, Mr. Morro. We have our Kenny Omega of the group, Mr. John Martin.
12 inches of chest missing.
And indeed we have this man, Dunphy. Kazam Dunphy.
It's going to be a tremendous payoff to this storyline.
It will.
So you know.
Do you want to do the handshake? Do you want to Mega Powers? Will we do it?
No,
will we do it?
no,
See, look, he's the fucking heel in this situation.
No,
he is the heel.
Sorry, you can't consistently tear a guy apart and then expect him to shake your hand. That's not how it works. Doesn't work in wrestling. Doesn't work in real life.
It's called bygones be bygones.
It's definitely works in wrestling.
Yeah, it's 100%. That's how it works in wrestling.
No way.
Sometimes they don't even allude to the fact that they had a blood feud, and then they go back on it.
And then they're tag team after.
The feud is. Sorry, we didn't have it. We are in the midst of a blood feud. It is.
Are we?
It is in.
What did I say? What happened here? You walked out.
You walked out. Could we do a cut up of every introduction of every podcast?
Don't listen to this, man.
a good idea.
Don't listen to this, man.
Anyway, sorry, John.
Good idea.
Sorry, John's got.
It's so awkward.
Yeah, sorry.
I have an idea. We should do a cut up of all the intros of Shane introducing Dunphy.
Yeah, I'm not going to
you
edit
weren't here
that,
at the
though.
start of the podcast,
That's a great idea.
so I don't know why you're making decisions.
Look, right, we're the Quadruple Bypass. Friend, foes, lovers, whatever you want to go with. We're a faction. That's the way it is. Okay. Until the end of time. And speaking of factions,
That's why we're here.
we're going to have a bit of a faction war. Like Survivor Series 1998?
7, I think.
Gang
Warfare.
Yeah, that was
97 or 98? We've done it already. We're 3 minutes into the podcast and we're getting our dates wrong.
Sorry, Alan.
Shout out to Alan, by the way, who has suggested he would become the Jamie of the podcast.
Yes, I ran past him when I was running the other day and didn't realise it was him until I ran past him again and he waved. So thank you, Alan.
Well, he would have told you it was him if he was part of the podcast.
If he was part of the podcast. Yeah. Do we need a Jamie to look up dates?
Yeah,
because
we just can't remember what Gang Warfare is.
Who's Jamie?
Joe Rogan's guy in the background.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
where when Joe doesn't know something, Jimmy.
Which is all the time.
Yeah.
Jimmy, put me up that 1997 Gang Warfare.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was the subtitle for the event that obviously became known for the Montreal screw job. But I think there was a whole gang warfare gimmick going into that.
There was, yeah.
I think maybe it was gang rules with like
Gang
a Z.
rules with a Z. It was gang rules.
So yeah, but you had like
extreme.
DOA running around, Los Pericos running around. You had the Jackals group, the commission, the Truth Commission.
Yes.
The True Commission, it was like this mad faction heavy burst in WWF. Yeah, that loads.
And most of them were rubbish.
Well, I longed for the time when we never had factions. I was like, more wrestlers should team up and be factions. But then, like now, everybody's in a faction.
It's like in prison. If you're in prison and if you're the one not in the gang, you better fucking join a gang.
And you know this obviously because of
What gang would have you been in?
Team Funaki.
Team Funaki gang. Yeah, indeed he would have. Right, so what we were going to do, we did it in our WhatsApp group, and you have some contentious decisions that I disagree with wholeheartedly.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think it's contentious. We're going to name a bunch of great wrestling factions.
No, but we're going to we're ranking them. We did a draft. So we started at from 3 to 1, and then we talk about our top factions of all time.
And we all had to have different 3.
And all of us have to agree. I think we have to at the end ultimately rank them based on
Mount Rushmore. This shit.
Yeah, but only 3.
No, there's 4 faces.
But we only picked 3. We only picked the top 3.
Why did we pick 3? There's 4 of us.
Yeah, I don't know. Why did we only pick 3? Why did we not pick 4?
4 is the average number of most quality factions.
After we discussed this out,
Sorry, why is he wearing sunglasses?
Because Shane's wearing the old tag team.
We're underground.
Stuck on sunglasses.
His stars shine so bright.
Stuck on sunglasses.
Huh?
There are
wearing sunglasses 3 weeks ago. Go on, Annie.
There are Manny's.
Can start wearing a hat.
Yeah, do.
Like a trilby. I mean,
actually.
Okay, who wants to go first? Morro, do you want to start? We'll go around the table and then back.
So am I going with my third pick first?
Yes.
So the order it was ordered. Was it Morro?
No, you would first pick.
No, I'd last pick.
Sorry, John had first pick, then me, then Shane.
Riveting listening.
Then Dunphy had a double pick, and we snaked through like that.
Yeah, it's good. People need to know.
Yeah.
So, but we'll go it from table to table, because it doesn't really matter in terms of the draft. The draft is already done.
So my third choice was
Speaking of tables, the Dudleys.
no, I didn't pick.
I know.
I could have picked
ECW Dudleys.
Yeah, there was loads of them.
Or the WWE Dudleys had 3 of them, and 4 of them if you count Stacey.
So just to clarify, that
And
wasn't
I
my
definitely
pick.
don't.
So, okay, he went Dudley's. Who'd you go with?
So
Fucking all over it.
my third pick was New Japan Wrestling's Chaos faction, started by Shinsuke Nakamura around, I don't know, like 2008 or 9.
So greatest faction of all time, you're picking for 3, a New Japan 2008 faction
Well,
called
they're
Chaos.
still active today.
Doesn't mean they're good.
His nickname in one of the WhatsApp groups we're in is Tokyo Dome.
Yes.
Why? What sets them apart?
I think they're super important in the revival of New Japan in the mid 2010s. And they helped bring to life another faction that I think we're going to talk about later today, the Bullet Club. So they had great feuds between Nakamura and Styles as the respective leaders, and later between Okada and Omega, who became the leaders of the two factions. So they carried New Japan in those early, like 2010 to 2015 times, as being both their top heel faction and then their top face faction, and then later on as kind of the counterpoint to the Bullet Club.
Are you
I think they're
picking
super
them
important.
just because you want to be like, oh, I'm a cool hipster wrestling fan?
Well, no.
That's why he got into it originally, I would say. But
Yeah.
now he is actually fairly well
Yeah,
versed on this shit.
Yeah.
Name some of the members.
Nakamura, Okada, Ospreay, Ishii. I'm forgetting loads. Like Rocky Romero was there for a while.
And what iteration are you picking?
So I'm going with a dual iteration.
The one with Orange Cassidy.
Not
and
that one. That's the
joke version.
The best friend clubs.
Yeah, the best friends.
The best friends are technically a part of Chaos, but they're the latter days, the dying days of the Chaos faction. I'm going to go for 2 iterations.
Okay.
The first being Nakamura when he broke away from Maccabi, and it really reinvigorated the kind of title scene of New Japan at the time, and it established the kind of current character that we see of Nakamura with the red pants and that kind of cool Nakamura. And then that's he grew his hair long. He was no longer doing the short hair, weird looking dude. And then also the Okada version where the Okada version where Okada was the leader and like Ospreay was his kind of protege, and he had the epic feud with Omega. So I think those 2 versions for me.
I like the second version because I remember it.
Yeah.
Like, I never saw the first version.
I didn't see the first version live. That was something like I went back on in latter years.
So in terms of like cultural wrestling landscape significance, you would put them over like anyone else that went into the group? Or would you, of anyone that we have picked, would you have picked them based on that?
Well, like there was a few picks that G had got to first that I would have had above Chaos.
Right.
Not the Dudleys. Not the Dudleys.
2 iterations. The second one was Stacey Keebler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like
when they
that
came
one.
back
I don't
on the
even count
rewards.
that. She didn't have a name.
Stacey Keebler Dudley.
But she didn't use Dudley as her last name.
She did.
She should have.
She was one of the brothers.
Yeah, well,
She was in Chaos, Stacey Nakamura.
Yeah.
the fucking Kinshasa you begin there.
The long legs on her. That'd be from Kinshasa, wouldn't it?
Wrap your head twice.
She could do it from like one turnbuckle and it'd be like a coast to coast Kinshasa.
What a move that would be.
I'm all in for that move.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went for Chaos. Like I said, this was a draft, and some of the ones that I personally would put above them were taken off the table at that stage. But I was still very happy to draft them because I think factions are really important in Japan, going back to like Saruto-gun in the 80s and stuff. So, but I did pick these because they're one that I watched live for the latter iteration with Okada and Ospreay, but also one that when I went back further and I enjoyed watching as well.
Nice.
Yeah, the whole New Japan faction stuff, just as a casual viewer, just it you get lost in it. To be fair, but you can tell that it is quite important to their product.
I found it helped at the start getting into it, but when you go back looking at, if you just click on any of the New Japan factions on Wikipedia and look at the member screen,
100.
you're like, holy shit. Like anyone who shows up has to be associated with a faction.
Yeah, it's like,
That's where it
remember
gets
that
confusing.
WCW Thunder game?
Yes.
And like everyone was part of like the flock.
Yes.
NWO Red and Black, WCW, and then you
I
had
think
some
that's cool, though. I think that makes
LWO.
sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
I don't take the piss on my jail reference, but I think that makes sense. Like, if everyone is in a gang, you need to find a gang. You're not going to go very far.
Yeah, Kyantai was your gang, sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly, in prison.
Did you chop off Al Venus's penis? Because we never really got to see what happened there.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
You weren't involved in that.
I wasn't. No, I was the latter day.
Okay.
So Chaos is
the
Morro's pick
off-TV
for
version.
number 3. John?
My third pick is a faction who I think are generally very underrated and were very underutilized in their time, but I think they're one of the most significant factions in the 90s, and it's the Nation of Domination.
Love that.
They were kind of like the glue that held the fucking WWF heavyweight main event, semi-main event kind of division for about like 2 or 3 years there, without necessarily being pushed as a top act. Very unique gimmick in terms of how it was utilized, and even the 2 different permutations of it, like both led by Ron Simmons, who was just coming off the back of that god awful Farouk Assad variation of his character, and needed something quick.
If he came in as Farouk, Nation of Domination Farouk straight away, as opposed to the
Should've been a top
Gladiator,
guy.
like...
Yeah, like
do you think,
like if in late '96, if he's coming in like doing that kind of Black Panther-esque kind of militant gimmick with a big fucking squad of dudes,
Wow.
And the attitude that Ron Simmons really brought to that character, like that could have been that could have changed things, I think, for WWF a lot quicker than they did.
Yeah.
When they're still trying to figure stuff out. They presented him as a fucking weird space gladiator with a
I can never understand.
with a fucking
Shit
basin
helmet.
on his head,
Shiny blue
managed
singlet.
by Sonny, and it fell apart
weird.
within 3 months. And then he was rebranded. Like, obviously there was kind of like like African American militant kind of overtones in that whole Black Panther kind of fucking aesthetic.
Even the colours.
that they were going for, the colors, like Nation of Islam, the whole fucking shebang. But then the group itself was just like a mad mix initially. You had PG-13.
yeah. Were
The
the Harris brothers in it? Or no, Brian Lee.
No, funnily enough, the Harris brothers,
Was it-
men of questionable tattoos, were not in.
Was it Brian Lee then? Was Brian Lee or Crush?
Brian Lee was in one of the offshoots. So the Nation started out with Ron Simmons, obviously as Farouk Assad, and then he brought in eventually Crush and Savio Vega,
Yeah.
who were not African American.
Sorry, the
but
Crush, that's
culturally,
what I was
yeah, very different. And then when they split apart, kind of post WrestleMania 13 or so, that's when they all got their own factions. So Savio Vega had his Los Boricuas,
yeah.
all the boys with the white pants, the white vests,
the Puerto Rican crew with the
proper West Side Story vibes off them. And then Crush had Disciples of Apocalypse, which is a badass name,
With the Harris brothers.
with the Harris brothers and Brian Lee. Yeah,
Fake Undertaker.
Class.
Faker Taker.
Yeah.
They feuded, didn't they?
So that was the first incarnation. No, it wasn't a mad hit, but like it was actually something very unique. Like the way they used to stand in the crowd throughout shows looked really
great on the
cool.
screen.
Looked really badass. It was such a cool presentation. If that was with Ron Simmons was presented from the top, you could have the thing could have launched a lot harder.
Did the rap? Your man rapping, didn't they?
Yeah, PG,
PG-13,
Jamie Dundee.
Was that the first rapper?
That was
like,
but Alta
was that
get-
before?
no, again.
Mo Mabel and
Oh,
Men
Mo
on a
Mabel,
Mission.
that was
Yeah,
before that,
and you had in PN News in WCW. He was a rapper, wasn't
but
he?
it wasn't a thing that was terribly well utilized. I mean, hip hop culture in WWF in that time as well was just.
Yeah, fairly off.
Yeah, they were as good at hip hop as they were with grunge or pretty much anything else in terms of.
Yeah, there was the
gimmicks that were
who's
smart.
the guitarist? Rocco Rock.
Man Mountain Rock, who was
Yeah,
the
yeah, sorry,
artist
Rocco
formerly
Rock.
known as Max Payne in
WCW.
WCW, who was quite a fearsome fucking proposition back in WCW. Yeah, bad gimmicks, but the rap integration with the first incarnation of Nation of Domination seemed kind of. Geez, there was a lot of similar sounding words.
And
there.
who was the almost what's his name?
Clarence Mason.
Clarence Mason. That was it.
Clarence Mason was a manager, I think, from USWA, who they brought up to be kind of a mouthpiece. He worked as Crush's manager because Crush was doing the jailbird gimmick. There was a loose kind of inference in the first incarnation of Nation of Domination that these are guys who were like
In prison.
imprisoned or wronged by the law,
Straight
or
out of
persecuted
Dunphy's
against.
prison gang.
Straight out of his, yeah.
Did you
the
get?
gang
Did,
sign.
did you
Deep
did you feud much with Nation of Domination in prison as a member of Kyantai?
You would have ran. You would have ran.
Was it chaos?
Nice. No, it didn't. No, it actually didn't.
Okay,
Let's just cut that one off.
So that leads me on to the more well-known, better version of the Nation of Domination that came off the back of that, where they decided they were just going to actually put together 5 fucking proper, like, African-American athletes, guys who needed to do something different, use it as an opportunity to give them something different to do. All anchored by Ron Simmons. Then you bring in Kama Mustafa, who's got to a shit ton of bad gimmicks at this point.
Papa Shango, and he was Kama.
He was Kama, the Supreme Fighting Machine. And he was about to go back.
MMA gimmick. Jeez, that was bad.
It was bad. It was really bad. But he didn't melt down the Undertaker's urn and made a fucking badass looking chain out of it.
Yeah.
So it's not all bad.
That's cool.
But he was about to be repackaged again as Papa Shango, which would have been great
cool
in 1997. But they were like, oh, fuck it, stick him in with the Nation. So the Nation, that new version of the Nation, was kind of career rehab for a lot of guys. Mark Henry as well.
The Rock.
D'Lo Brown was the only one who continued over from the original incarnation into the new one. And then they bring in The Rock.
Who needed it badly?
Owen Hart.
as well.
And eventually Owen Hart.
Let's not forget Owen.
Incongruously, like in 19... When was that? 98? That was probably late 98, wasn't it? 99?
They needed him.
It was 19...
My biggest memory of the Nation is just this never-ending Ahmed Johnson feud.
Yeah.
That did go on too.
That was like my massive...
Oh, Ahmed briefly joined them as well.
Yeah,
actually.
I know, yeah. But that was my...
That feud did go on forever.
Like, I was only about 8 or 9.
We got some badass matches out of it.
Not very badass promos.
The Nation were under... Like, there was a brief tease of, like, feuds between the Nation and the Hearts, which would have been really fun. But for the most part, I thought the best Nation feuds were... I liked it. I enjoyed the Gang Wars thing to an extent, but Nation DX.
Yeah.
And they were really good foils for each other. And you're just looking... And I would say the Nation was way more of a heavyweight fucking group.
Were you a fan of the blackface that DX did?
No.
Exactly. Like, how fucking...
Why did he do
No.
this? He's trying to get...
No, I'm just trying to... I'm trying to bring up...
bait here. I adored the blackface. I'm trying to
put that in.
All the Al Jolson posters up in my fucking childhood bedroom.
I'm trying to talk about one of the biggest moments in the nation's history, which was based on that. That's one of the most memorable things.
When the Nation...
So they're race baiting, which means that they're going at this really edgy kind of style of wrestling, which is completely new to us.
Yeah, I mean, there was too much race baiting within it. And in terms of, like, the novelty in mainstream wrestling of seeing an all African American faction with, like, 5 really fucking strong players, and like all of them were single stars in their own right. Like, it was really novel at that time because you didn't really see that combination, and then a lot of them ends up getting fucking couched in, like, they're angry black men.
Exactly.
This way they're doing it, and they didn't get the chance to evolve from that as much as some other factions probably would do over time.
Did it kind of just become a vehicle to promote The Rock towards the end?
Yeah, I thought the Nation imploding was one of the most interesting parts about it. Maybe possibly the most interesting. And
it always felt that they just never...
problems.
They never just got enough mileage out of Nation. The stuff that they could have done with the Nation, and it was way more interesting, I think, areas to explore with it.
But
Which is why people forever have been saying, bring back the Nation.
When you look at the offshoots, though, of what the Nation was...
Lot of Nation in the bloodline.
Yeah, like... Kama Mustafa becomes the Godfather, one of the most beloved members of the Attitude Era. D'Lo Brown has a great run, his probably best run, where he has the chest brace, he gets the Intercontinental title and the European title. Mark Henry, albeit initially struggling with sexual chocolate, comes back with Rodney Mack, has the Hall of Pain thing in 06. The Rock speaks for itself.
Sexual chocolate was a really hot gimmick for a while. It was the first time that Mark Henry had properly got over.
Yeah,
and it happened within the context of the Nation.
Yeah,
because that was that group of lads travelled on the road, and there was a good mix of experience in there.
That's a great point. Everyone benefited from it.
Yeah, like it's a big heavyweight faction led by the first ever African American world heavyweight champion in wrestling history, and then it's a crew of fucking all timers, and they definitely should have been allowed to dominate
Nice.
a little bit more than they maybe did. And
Farouk world title run?
I always thought, there was space for that in 97. He post WrestleMania 13, he was really hot. He entered into his first proper...
He was Undertaker feud.
He fought the Undertaker for the world title, King of the Ring 97. Tidy little feud. It really was a tidy little feud at the time.
There was definitely space between Mania and SummerSlam.
Oh, yeah.
There was a gap there where he could have definitely had a run.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, if he'd come in stronger in late 96, like, imagine, like, if that version of the Nation of Domination was coming in, going straight for Shawn Michaels, and, say Ron Simmons was in the Sid spot at Survivor Series 96.
Yeah. Class.
That would have been a much hotter way to to launch that faction. They took a while to get going, but like throughout 98 and 99,
Would he still lose in San Antonio at Royal Rumble 97 if Farouk was in the Sid spot?
He's going to lose his smile anyway, isn't he? So,
that smile was
that
being
smile
lost
was
anyway.
fucking half wiped off his face at that point. So
The smile was gone.
but anyway, yeah, I think they were a mainstay of the Attitude Era. They don't get the plaudits of a lot of their other contemporaries, maybe because loads of people in WWE are racist. Who knows?
Would have been great to see Vader interact with them when they had Vader and Ron Simmons kind of running it back, but in WWE.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think more so with the Nation. Like, remember they had some really memorable feuds, but also like it felt like there was a lot of stuff that was left on the table, which I think you could also say for the Hearts, maybe DX as well to an extent. You know, because everything was about to get mired in like everything was becoming corporation soon as well. But the Nation of Domination really acquitted themselves well in that. I think there was still juice. Like by mid '99, like Ron Simmons was in the fucking corporate ministry.
Yeah,
which was a shocker of a faction in my opinion. And
Agreed. And
I feel
lucky he came out with that with the APA stuff though.
But he like even if The Rock was breaking off, like the Nation of Domination was still a great vehicle to get. A lot of younger guys.
You could have done a
freshen
face
some
run.
guys up.
They could have had a face run against the corporation.
Yeah. The face run was a big untapped thing because Godfather was like that was a good babyface squad as well.
Yeah, Godfather ends up in Right to Censor eventually.
Yeah.
Spider Alert, Right to Censor are everyone's number.
I just wish they were as kind of like
they were a good faction.
Like, you know, they would use any opportunity to fucking resurrect DX, and I just wish they'd been as gung ho with the
Nation.
When you look at the caliber of that stable and the people that were in it and how over they all got individually at that time and also throughout their careers, like,
and the love people still has for it as well.
Yeah.
Nation of Domination 3, Chaos 3 for you.
My 3 was Dangerous Alliance. Paulie Dangerously's big stable from the early 90s, well, late 80s. There was an iteration in AWA. Myself and Nash, and we did our podcast back in the day. We covered a lot of early 90s WCW. And that's when I fell in love with them.
Scheduled for 2 falls.
Thank you, Shane. 2 falls. Thank you, Niall. Yeah, it's a combination of things, I suppose. Why I love this, it's the visual, it's who was involved, it's how it came about, it's how short it was, it's that they were draped in gold for a while. So for people who don't know, Dangerous Alliance is Paulie Dangerously. He was coming off a commentator run with WCW. He gets fired. Kayfabe, real firing, we don't know, but eventually he comes back claiming he has a manager's license and he's going to create a faction that will destroy WCW.
An alliance, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah. A very dangerous one. So he brings, there's also this thing going on at the time, the Phantom is kind of coming in and out, kind of this weird kooky bullshit gimmick. Some guys coming in, interrupting everyone. Turns out it's Rick Rude. Paulie is hanging out with Medusa before she became Alundra Blaze, and she's like a kick-ass woman, probably the first female kind of valet who can actually kick your ass rather than just eye candy. And Paulie brings in Larry Zbyszko, Arn Anderson, beautiful Bobby Eaton, and eventually stunning Steve Austin. Steve Austin was TV champion at the time. Rick Rude becomes the US champion. Arn and Zbyszko were feuding with Dustin and somebody, and they become the tag team champions. So this is just like 6 months of absolute domination.
What's Bobby Eaton doing?
Beautiful Bobby, just hanging about, looking beautiful. Yeah, they had stunning, beautiful, and ravishing.
Yeah,
and Aaron.
And then Aaron.
And Aaron.
The Glock.
And Medusa, of course.
And Larry's Zbyszko.
And Larry's Zbyszko.
I mean, Jesus, like that is that's a serious
Zbyszko.
roster of heavyweights.
Not a beautiful man.
And I suppose
Not at all.
it accumulates with this War Games match, which is a lot of people would say is the greatest War Games match of all time. And their feud was basically against all the top guys in WCW. So they basically took on everybody, and it unearthed Stone Cold, and supposedly Paulie claims that was an absolute must. They said they wanted to do like another 4 horsemen type thing, and Heyman said, actually, I think we need 5, and I want that guy there. And
then, of course, Austin goes like he trusts Paul Heyman, so he goes to ECW, and then you start getting the infancy of like a Stone Cold character for the first
So
time.
that was
there.
supposed to be a Heyman doing a Four Horsemen esque.
Yeah.
So like Rick Rude is the Ric Flair part. Then you got Aaron Zabisco. Who's the fourth one? Bobby
Eaton.
Eaton. And then he plugged Steve Austin into that. Then.
Yeah, and they had Medusa as valet as well, but then bring in Steve and make it.
Great show.
It's an unbelievable show.
Yeah, because Steve is like you always have the young gun starting up in. It seems in factions, because that's what generally it should be a vehicle for, to help young people settle in and stuff. So Austin was that. It always seemed a bit disjointed for me, because maybe they all seemed like top names. And looking back on it, you're like, well, Stone Cold's a top name. Larry Zbyszko broke Bruno's back. He's a top name. Arn Anderson, he's a big. So it always seemed like, but that's just looking back in hindsight. Not at the time.
When you're living it at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it only stopped because Paulie, storyline wise, they fired Zbyszko, and then Paulie felt like obviously Jim Herd and all that bullshit that went on.
That came in.
the
Jim
90s.
Herd came in then and started making gladiators.
Pizza Hut executive Jim Herd.
Paulie left WCW in some kind of manner that he's still seemingly legally obligated not to speak about.
But
Whatever the hell happened.
Rude ends up showing up on ECW as well at one stage.
They did try a very brief iteration in ECW, which didn't go down very well. But I just think for those 6 months, like if you're thinking about a faction, bringing all these guys together, it didn't last very long. It accumulates in possibly one of the greatest matches of all time, according to some people.
They also didn't outstay their welcome.
Didn't outstay their welcome.
Which happens to a lot of factions.
Dusted. Brilliant.
And
what was the write-off then?
Done
'Cause,
Dustin Rhodes.
What was, like, when it stopped, did it peter out, or was there a defining, explode or implosion?
Heyman, they all left more or less. Heyman,
So it petered out.
Yeah, and it happened really suddenly. So Zbyszko got fired storyline wise. Heyman left. Medusa left. Austin went on for a little bit longer with obviously Hollywood Blondes or whatever.
Did he go into the Hollywood Blondes after that, was it?
Yeah, more or less.
Which, he was pissed off about because it obviously stalled the momentum he was trying to build as a singles guy, and then he was put back into it.
And management didn't see the same thing.
Interestingly, when you're talking about they wanted to make the Dangerous Alliance a new modern day Four Horsemen, it was purported that the Hollywood Blonde tag team partner of Stone Cold was going to have the Horseman X. So I was reading Chris Jericho's book, and they were talking about Brian Pillman when he was doing a bit of a loose cannon. They wanted to have another version of the Four Horsemen, and Brian Pillman was going to be the leader of that, and he was talking to Jericho about maybe coming in as one of the Horsemen X and stuff. So they were always trying to recreate something that worked before.
That's Wrestling 101.
And speaking of that, what they were trying to... Your number 3 pick was Nation of Domination. Mine was what some people thought they were going to recreate with the Nation of Domination, and it's the New Day. So a lot of people thought that they were going to be this black...
Well, they kind of went down that to start with.
At the start, yeah.
No, at the very start, weren't they like
gospel
preachers?
And they were heels.
No, but they started off as faces, didn't they? And people didn't like that.
Huh.
Yeah, no, they kind of pretty much bombed initially as faces. Like, they started as faces in 2014. They were heel.
They were doing the positivity.
Power of positivity. And then that ends up turning into... It was starting to bomb so bad that it turned into Kofi Kingston's first and only heel turn that he's done. But they were initially intended to be a kind of gospel. Like, Vince McMahon always had a hard on, I think, for some kind of like African American gospel singers, a ministry type gimmick, which he tried to do with Devon Dudley.
Yeah.
From your favorite faction, Dudley Boys.
Yeah, number 1.
How many references?
But yeah, he wanted to do a kind of happy singing African American faction that were effectively just like a bunch of ministers.
Yeah.
Like religious teams, positivity, and like, what the fuck are you doing with that in 2014? And the lads knew it.
30 years out of date.
30 years.
Yeah,
out
bro,
of date.
you peaked at brother love.
But then they started to subvert it, and they started to get their teeth into it.
They got really smart with it.
Yeah,
very smart guys in general.
What I
Very
really
much so.
liked is by then in 2014, I think Kofi Kingston had somewhat, I wouldn't say overstayed his welcome.
He was stale.
He was stale.
Fuck.
Yeah.
He had that Randy Orton thing, and remember he did the boom drop, leg drop onto a NASCAR, and then he had the blow up of Randy Orton, where Randy Orton was calling him stupid or something because he was meant to stay down for a punt kick and golf.
That was about 6 years before that, I would say, maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe
was it
5 years? Yeah, it was.
Because
thought
Kofi's
during that feud.
Like he had an interminable feud with
2000
Dolph Ziggler where they only wrestled each other, I think, for about 3 years.
and he was like tag team partner of like Evan Bourne and CM Punk and you know he was just and it was in that
Floating.
age where people were just floating.
And his momentum was shot, like, you know,
Yeah.
like a lot of guys who spent too long in the mid card from that era, and there was a lot of those as well, like the Carlitos, you know, R-Truth as well.
the colognes in general. But then you had Xavier Woods, who I used to really like as Apollo. He was in
Consequences
Creed,
It was
sorry.
a vaguely Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed themed gimmick. That was the first time I saw him in TNA,
And he was tag
it
team with
an
R-Truth.
Amazing visual. Yeah. He was brought in. So what's his debut? What amazing creative do they give this guy for his WWF debut? They look at him, they go, well, he's a black man, and we're just going to get him to come on out and dance with R-Truth on the stage, and R-Truth will introduce him. And it's, you know, one of those classic Vince McMahon calls via Michael Cole, you know, oh look, this guy just loves to have fun, which is like Vince McMahon's like choice of description for every African American man. They're either really angry or they love dancing and
having fun,
like having fun, having the crack.
and then you have
Xavier Woods, dead on arrival.
And then you have Big E, who in NXT was doing the King Kong Bundy gimmick with the 5 count.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then he goes with Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah.
As his heavy.
And then wins the Intercontinental
like
title.
this for 5 years.
Takes his whole personality away.
Yeah.
And initially, like, no one gave a fuck.
Like when you see what he is actually like as a human being, you realize there's no way he chose that for himself.
Absolutely not.
Because once he started performing like in a different way, he had that freedom.
Like
You're like,
NXT.
No, but his original gimmick was that he wanted to do was a postman gimmick. Did you hear that?
is it just a thing where you look at this guy and go, he is one of the biggest humans I've ever seen?
He always delivers.
We can't let him be a jovial character.
Like he benches like 600 pounds or something like
Insane. Yeah.
But they couldn't. He's obviously a jovial guy, but they couldn't let him do that because
Probably because Vince McMahon looks at guys like that and go, yeah, be serious, be really mean. That's all I want you to do. Say nothing.
Yeah.
Was he the second NXT champion?
The first Seth Rollins, and I think
He was
he beat
Seth
him.
Rollins,
Yeah.
then,
So, like,
then Big E.
Like
Then
they
Big E,
already
yeah.
had big
And then
plans
Bo
for him.
Dallas, maybe.
I think Bo,
But they have massive plans. But it was this kind of whole thing coming from NXT. I don't give a fuck about you. It's you shouldn't have gone through our
Sink or
system.
swim. Yeah.
And you're not allowed to be a star before you come to us either. You basically have to be an athlete. That
Both
looks jacked.
him and Xavier Woods did exactly the opposite. And
Yeah.
they still end up in the same position.
Yeah.
But then, the creativity that they utilized, bringing things like the trumpet into it, and just looking like they're enjoying themselves. Big E with, he shouts before he comes onto the stage, and the bootios, and
Do you think it was?
the pride and the passion that they put into their costumes?
Do you think
they look like a faction.
Do you think that, when you said to bring the trumpet and stuff out like that, there comes a point in wrestling where Vince screws you over so many times, or you feel you're never going to get it, that you stop giving a fuck, and therefore it actually creates this amazing creativeness where you can actually do what you want.
You can see that with them, and I think there was a lot of, like, things like the trumpet is them going like, oh, we could do so much funny kind of like really funny shit with this,
and it can't
it's
get
also,
worse.
They're kind of going like,
What are they going to do? Bury us more?
Yeah,
exactly. But also going like, oh, we'll do a bunch of shit, kind of juvenile stuff that's like Vince coded enough that Vince would be like, aha, this is great.
Yeah, but
then also they've been very kind of like knowing and meta and postmodern at times in ways where you're going like, they kind of took that thread from the Young Bucks to a degree with that, and they were kind of subverting the idea of these like.
But for every ridiculousness of the New Day, you have a ridiculous 3MB that just is never.
But it's also a lot to do with the
Those guys just didn't
the charisma of the performance.
It's their individual. Like when Big E shakes his hips, you're like, fuck yeah, Big E is shaking his
And
hips.
also, though, as well, where a lot of other groups fall down, and we spoke about this in the Way It's 6 episode, is when the bell rings, New Day were fucking awesome.
And they all complimented each other.
But the 3MB thing is a bit different because, like, Drew didn't get that. I actually got nothing left to lose, so I'll just do what I want until he actually got fired.
Yeah.
While these three were kind of doing that while they were still employed. So are you a fan of? Do you really like them, or do you think they're really important?
I both.
Okay.
Both. Like I like when we were going through that turgid time of WWE pay-per-views, I always thought
were
the New
right
Day
spot.
matches delivered. Yeah. And no matter whatever three you went with, like going up against the Usos, it was great. Bludgeon Brothers, all those kind of matches.
They were so
Bar,
good.
that's some good matches.
like Big E doing a spear through the apron
Yeah.
to someone. Like I was like, this guy gives a fuck about his craft.
Did you eat the cereal?
No.
Well, then you're not.
I would have ate the cereal if I could have purchased the cereal.
Lads, we are just much too old for booty-os.
Yeah.
Think?
I like a good booty.
But like they're mad into like 90s references, you know, when they're doing the Power Rangers.
Video games, like meme culture, like comic books, like anime,
nerds.
like it's,
Nerds. They were actually, around the era when nerds took over wrestling.
Yeah, they were quintessential nerds in the nerd-coded era.
But I will say crucially about them is that their ability to build like feuds and actually really inject like their programs and matches with like meaning and stakes is unparalleled. Even though they're like a gimmick that plays it quite jokey and winky, unlike other factions I could talk about, delete, but they don't really let it get in the way of the actual the wants of those characters. Like they all have that, like the fact that two of them have become WWE champion in that faction is mad.
And
the stories have been like, even though they were a Vince McMahon book, but were ultimately booked quite well and like really were like quite emotional.
They got so
audience and
over. He
performers.
couldn't not book them.
Woods is like
They'd leave.
I was so invested in Xavier Woods win the King of the Ring as well.
Yeah,
so
he single-handedly made the King of the Ring.
but that's the thing.
important
They really make their. You see the way they operate online as well. They make their feuds feel important, and they really know when to turn off the comedy.
Like even with Woods just saying, you know, I've all my life I've wanted to be King of the Ring. You know,
It was the most important thing to me when I was a kid.
Seeing Bret Hart win it, seeing Owen Hart win it, and
Reinvigorate the tournament.
yeah, but you love like as wrestling fans, we appreciate the legacy of wrestling, and he's a wrestling fan, so he appreciates it too, as opposed to
Also-
someone who thinks you're a fucking dumb fuck for watching wrestling.
Yeah.
Just purchase and buy and forget about what you've seen. Then
Also,
you know,
I
he
think
cares.
another thing that's important about them that we haven't quite seen the result of yet, but we should, is that they didn't fall into the traps of every other faction in WWE where they had to break up and become jealous of each other.
Yeah, that's a big point. Yeah.
And if we see more of that in the future, that thing of, okay, Big E's gone on the singles run, we're his mates, we'll support him.
Yeah.
And then the singles run finishes 6-8 months down the line. Now we're still back to being,
now,
you know.
what they did start kind of tipping off for me when obviously Big E is gone. They became more of a tag team. You have their feud with the Final Testament right now when they're going to
Where they are teasing a split for the first time, like.
but it's
Yeah,
not
weirdly,
But
yeah.
like in our heads, it's like it's not going to happen. So if it does happen, you're like, holy
I think
shit!
this thing, and Odyssey Jones, I don't know, do you trust him? Is he a good Big E replacement for New Day?
We'll see. But I like the fact that now they're going to try and
Big
once
E-
again bring in a younger person to try to get over.
Yeah.
No harm.
Is Big E done?
Not totally confirmed, but it's not looking
It's
great.
not looking good. It's been
He
over
was saying
2
the bones
years now.
aren't properly
not fusing or whatever.
Fusing,
Yeah. It's been like 2 years.
yeah.
He'll come back.
I think he'll come
I
back.
feel he will
know,
come back.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I want him to come
I
back.
kind of have this weird belief that neck injuries can all be solved because of Danielson,
Edge, yeah.
Age.
Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
I'd love to even just see him back on TV because
Well,
he's
what he could do-
so much charisma. Like even when you're looking at the pre-shows,
He's
it's great
brilliant
to
on
see
the
him.
pre-shows,
Yeah, he's class.
What he could do is what Kurt Angle did and take like 30, 40, 50 painkillers a day.
Perk angle.
Perk
angle.
Perky.
We ready to move on to number
Yes.
2 picks?
So my number 2 pick, and you asked an interesting question to Shaz there. He said,
Sorry, just
Do you like
just repeat that, please?
you asked an interesting
I think it was you that asked it.
Did I ask it?
I think it was you.
Yeah, a few minutes ago when I said,
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
number
Sorry.
1, do you like them? And number 2, is it because they're important?
Yeah.
This faction, I don't never particularly liked, but I think are super important. And that is Evolution.
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery. And I wish we got that version with the other guy.
Mark Jindrak.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor Mark Jindrak. He showed up at Triple Mania. I think.
He did, yeah.
Question with Evolution. What would you say are the tangible differences between Evolution and Four Horsemen?
There's none. They didn't have a manager.
They didn't have a manager.
JJ Dillon is the difference.
Ric Flair. Ric
Flair's
Flair.
old.
No, but Ric Flair's
Ric
old. So
Flair's Aaron Anderson.
He's now.
he's not.
enforcer.
No,
Aaron was
Big
always
E is
younger
Big
than
E
Ric.
is Aaron Anderson. Well,
no,
kind of.
Batista.
Batista, yeah. Big E.
Batista was Aaron Anderson. Ric Flair would probably
Tully?
but Ric Flair would have been willing to lose more.
Yeah.
as opposed to Triple H.
Flair lost the whole time when he was in the Horseman.
Yeah, but Triple H,
Never
he had
lost.
that reign of terror. But again, he lost to Goldberg.
be honest,
I agree with you. I never
Lost
liked them.
Yeah.
I never fucking liked
I
But
did.
think they're really important.
Did you?
I thought they were a really useful faction at a time where there wasn't any particularly good factions, and they were four like
I like the breakups.
Hall of Famers.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
The break. I wasn't big on the Randy Orton one. I thought they
Loved Orton.
I thought they shot themselves in the foot with that. That could have been
They
a longer
fucked
term
it, yeah.
angle.
The Batista
But
one
the
was
Batista one was
sensational.
impeccable. One of the great.
Sensational.
Why do you think the Orton one was done wrong?
It was premature. It happened like they gave that story no time to bed in.
SummerSlam to Unforgiven.
He wins the world title, his first world title, youngest world champion in history. SummerSlam 2004.
But they're already teasing it.
He's
They're teasing
24.
They're teasing it leading up there.
Did they kick him out like the next fucking night or something?
very short.
And then
Yeah.
Triple H wins the belt off him a month later. Like, what the fuck?
No, see, that's
Yeah, because he was celebrating. He was on top of Batista's shoulders, and he got that.
Yeah.
So it was the next night.
Next night. And you could have gotten fucking months out of, in a similar way that they actually did with The Rock and
Batista.
Ron Simmons in
sorry,
the
yeah.
Nation Domination.
Or with
as well.
Batista and Triple H.
Or with Batista. Well,
was
it
a
was different
Mania.
with Batista. And Triple H and Batista, it was different because it was Triple H kind of manipulating Batista. Batista wasn't like losing the run of himself. What was really interesting in this context was
yeah, he's so young.
like he's the young guy, he was the upstart who overtakes the leader of the group, and he's the world title. So you're just run 2 months of Randy Orton being that.
No, I think you could have
Telling-
built.
Losing the
telling
run of
Triple
himself,
H what to do.
giving Triple H orders.
That'd be
Great
amazing.
television.
Yeah,
I think you could have
build
I
You
totally
could have
agree
built
with
it to
that.
Mania, I think, because by the time Mania rolls around, Orton has been heel, turned face, and then back a heel because he's up against Undertaker.
Yeah, they did it way too quick. They turned him face way too soon. He wasn't ready for it.
No.
It completely ruined his first world title reign.
They only put
it was
the
a
title.
mess.
They
I
only
really
put the
loved him,
title
won it,
on
though.
him because Brock had left.
Who did he beat?
So Brock was previously the
Say his name.
Redacted.
Say his name.
John?
Do you want to say his name?
John, just do it.
Who did Orton beat for the title? I can't remember.
Please, John. John, don't. Did that pick up? Can you check? Did that?
Yeah, that guy.
So yeah, Orton beats Chris Benoit. And anyway, we're not on the Orton thing. I thought
That was a weird
forgot what
match
I was
as well.
saying.
Like the weird finish,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
But like,
Oh, sorry.
but
They only put the title on Orton then because Brock had just left the company and he was their youngest ever.
And they wanted
world
to
champion.
raise that the fuck out of
yeah,
history.
they wanted
accolade.
a 24-year-old as opposed to a
Instead of
25-year-old.
25-year-old, yeah.
Same as they did with Punk when they were like, "You're not going to be the longest champion in modern history."
We need to put yeah.
Like Randy was absolutely ready for a world title reign. Then he'd come off the absolute baller of a fucking star-making feud with Foley. He was ready for the slot. It's just like they immediately book him to be a fucking idiot. To turn him face.
And no one
All
likes
the
him because
heat he's been building for the last fucking
and he
the legend killer,
years.
kicking your favorite
kicking owl lads and owl ones in the head for
people.
sport.
So good.
and like. But we're talking about the implosions a lot, like the actual faction in
Okay,
itself.
so the run itself, this is what in some ways
It starts with Flair and Triple H.
Yes, this is what's important about the run is, right? You have earlier Triple H runs on top as a heel that are absolutely shit.
But Triple H has always seemed to have needed
This is
someone
what I
in his
mean.
corner.
Now he needed Flair and he needed the faction in order for him to actually be good enough to be the top guy. When people like you see online now, people put Triple H in their top 10 of all time and stuff.
I
I'm
hate
like,
that.
you
Deluded.
obviously didn't live through it. Like Triple H obviously fancied himself as being on.
But that's the same as saying Cena
Cena.
as well. Like living through Cena, if you put him in your top 10, that was fucking horrible.
I
for a
know,
lot of
yeah,
us.
but parts of the Cena runs were great. Like the
Same
only,
with Triple H, though, I think.
I don't know.
No, as
I
much.
found
a lot
it really
of it.
boring, like super boring.
Yeah,
okay.
like it wasn't for me until he had Flair and Evolution that you could say, okay, he's actually the top guy now. But he needed them around him.
Right, now that you're saying that, he's the top guy now. So you established him as the top guy, and then you look at the two people, Randy Orton and Batista, that emanated from that.
Yeah.
And then obviously Ric Flair was always the top guy. You know, that has to be considered one of the most successful then factions.
That's why I picked him.
Yeah.
Because of what came out of it as well. It made Batista, and in the long run, it's good on Orton's legacy. It wasn't super helpful for him initially, but in the long run, given like his whole career, it definitely did help.
WWF ever had a
group called Legacy because it did his Legacy.
Did WWF ever had a suit wearing faction a la the Four Horsemen?
The other thing I hated is I always
right
liked
to
the
censor.
suits were too big.
Yeah, they definitely were.
The suits were too big.
Oh yeah, there was room in those. I'd say, yeah.
Too swingy. The suits were
Ridiculously too
swingy.
big. There wasn't any kind of major, like sharp suited Four Horsemen-esque faction. It felt like a kind of obvious Four Horsemen reboot, but when you weren't around for the original Four Horsemen, like that was kind of refreshing to see it. And because it's got flair, it's got a bit of legitimacy. They're going with four guys. It felt like the four right guys. Sorry, Mark Jindrak.
Sorry, yeah. Well, Batista was definitely the right guy.
Corporation kind of had suits.
The Rock had them nice shirts.
Yeah.
I know, but then you had Boss Man walking around.
They weren't as well.
Shamrock was always in his underpants.
He was always in his underpants.
Yeah.
Friend of ours.
Briscoe and Patterson always had their suits on.
They'd have their suits on.
Vince had his suits on.
Yeah, Shane-O.
But yeah, they went on and they all had gold at one stage. Orton had the Intercontinental title.
That was cool. Love that.
Flair and Batista were the tag champs.
So I love that as
wasn't
well.
it?
Thought that was a cool tag team partnership.
And it was like Raw was based around Evolution almost. But then again, when you're talking about
They had a cool theme.
They had a really cool team. Really good merch as well. I had it.
ooh,
Yeah.
I bought an Evolution t-shirt, I think, at my first WWE show.
Nice shows.
In the Point back in the day. And it was a tidy t-shirt as well.
But
Like, they were good merch.
when you look at the differences,
I meant to show off my Chaos t-shirt at the time for the failed version.
Not the best Japanese t-shirt here, though.
No, it's not Japanese.
I support
Yes.
Irish
It's
wrestling.
made in Japan.
I support Irish wrestling. OTT.
M.I.J.
Good for you,
Book him,
Shane.
Joe.
Anyway, on to you there, Shane. That's Evolution.
We'll go
I'm
on
sick
to-
of talking about Evolution because in reality they're kind of boring.
I liked them.
They're important. They are
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
I would have liked to see Batista and Devon stay together and then Batista become Batista Dudley.
Did
but,
Batista go on to do that?
yeah. He was in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Big Hollywood star.
Yeah.
Keep thinking of Aaron
Multi-world
Anderson playing
champion.
Drax the Destroyer now. if Batista is the Aaron Anderson of Evolution,
That'd be unreal.
Aaron as Drax, just a load of Glocks.
Could have happened.
Top off.
Early 90s version.
Still really hairy, but they're trying to paint him.
Imagine Aaron Anderson going into the makeup trailer for 4 hours every morning.
No CGI back then.
All the makeup artists go, oh, fuck,
Aaron
here it goes.
Anderson
It's Aaron again.
Drax.
You're real nice to him, but he knows have the Glock on the counter.
It was nice seeing him show up at SummerSlam, actually.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Always great to have Aaron in a place.
It was a cool moment.
Johnny
it's a
Martz,
lot.
you want to go with your second pick?
No, so this is not a faction similar to Morro. I think, it wasn't like I was their biggest fan. I was not around for their heyday, but they're very, very important. And it's the Fabulous Freebirds. They're a faction that I think they're important because they're like the first proper rock band, like real life rock band, that were wrestlers, like wrestlers who traveled together, trained together, lived a lifestyle that was also reflected on their on-screen characters and gimmicks. They were a bunch of good old boys, which is generally for the time in America is coded as kind of southern and slightly racist.
Actually, they came out with the Confederate.
Being the
Confederate
implication,
flag.
these boys were draped in the Confederate flag. Like all real life friends, you got Michael PSAs, you got Terry Gordy, you got Buddy Roberts, and you got Jimmy Garvin as well. That's the general foursome. There was also Iceman King Parsons.
I was
that they
about
brought
to
in.
say the Iceman. Yeah.
They brought in the Iceman in the late 80s to feud with when Hayes left the Freebirds. So racism was so inbuilt into their gimmick in a way that like it was heat for them to bring in a black member to replace Michael Hayes. And Iceman King Parsons was called Blackbird. But that did some business back in the day. But I think what was really novel about them was that they were absolutely fucking hated everywhere they went. They knew how to elicit the rage of the audience. They really lived like a rock band.
They're somewhat famed for a lot of people credit them with it. I don't think it's 100% true, but a lot of people
First
credit
act to
them
use entrance music.
Yeah.
Class. They had Leonard Skinner
Freebird.
baiting out.
And then
all
they had
the time.
Bad Street, which
Bad Street,
is
USA,
amazing.
yeah.
Michael Hayes, he sang that, and he's also the guy that sings the Big Show theme song.
I knew that.
Well, that's Michael Hayes.
Is that Michael Hayes? I thought he got the same guy for Paul White's.
He sang at a
AEW
good few
music.
people's
I don't
weddings.
think it is Michael Hayes.
I was pretty much. Maybe it's just the well part.
Jimmy. Is that the guy's name Jimmy that we asked?
yeah.
do
Jimmy-
research?
Jimmy Al.
Just go
Yeah,
down.
Little Jimmy Garvin.
Little Jimmy Garvin. But they really were a kind of ahead, maybe not even ahead of their time. I think they happened when they needed to happen. Like they toured America like rock stars. Always got booked together. They were hot in every territory they went to, apart from WLF where they immediately got fired.
Yeah, what the fuck happened there?
So Vince signs them because they're the hottest faction there. They've done great business, obviously, in Texas for the most part. That legendary feud that they had with the Von Erichs.
What the
World
fuck
class
is this?
championship wrestling.
But Vince sees an opportunity. It's the height of the rock and wrestling connection. WWF is just taken off. MTV is launched. WWF is on
Cyndi
MTV.
Lauper's there.
Cyndi Lauper's in. They're getting ready for the first WrestleMania. If you're booking at that time, and particularly as Vince McMahon was, and like hyping this rock and wrestling connection, well, what act do you want? You want the wrestling act who are literally rock stars. They party like a fucking southern rock band. That's their whole, like, the aesthetic, the vibe, the gimmick. Get the boys in. So he did.
Did he just bring in Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy?
He brought Hayes, Gordy, and
Roberts?
I think Roberts.
Yeah.
Roberts was breaking down, and he was Jimmy Garvin kind of took over for the most part. But I think it was the original incarnation. But
Gordy was about 12 at the time.
he probably
Yeah, but
was.
he's still 6'5".
12 years old. Yeah, 6'5".
Had 400 matches under his belt.
Yeah, like Terry Gordy was a beast, like one of the best
Freaking
wrestlers
nature.
in the world, freaking nature. Michael Hayes, never like an amazing worker, but like solid enough.
Very-
But the mic was really where he shone.
Very charismatic.
Yeah, and
Had
like,
the riz, as the youngsters say.
he had a riz, and they were nasty, arrogant. He's like they were.
Did he steal that, or is that an original thing for him?
I don't know.
So good.
It's a good vibe.
Yeah.
It always gives me like early WCW stuff, and he's just coming out.
Yeah.
coming out
Like-
hey,
like a
back-
chicken.
Him and
It's mad
Jimmy
to think that he was 40 when he was managing the Hardy Boys.
I know.
And
Doc
still in the
Hendricks.
wrestling part of him, Doc Hendricks. What an awful gimmick.
That was his introduction, like, to me as a kid.
But I remember because
This guy. Why is this
obviously,
old guy wearing cool young person pants?
yeah, like
He's
obviously,
10 years younger than AJ Styles is now.
yeah, it's shocking.
He didn't look it though.
No, he looked 10 years old.
Oh, that was
AJ
almost like
Styles
Vince was like, "Fuck you for getting over elsewhere."
Maybe, and the fact that he didn't work.
Hey, everybody's Doc
But maybe
Hendricks
that he
here on
didn't work
Livewire.
there.
We're gonna
But getting back to the WWF,
Obviously, like I wasn't around to see the Freebirds live, but when you do learn about him via like, oh, Doc Hendricks was part of this, and then you read about the Freebirds, then you watch the tape of them, and you just see how universally hated they were. But obviously, in like '84, Vince would want them to be part of his roster. Brought them in, boys, a couple of good old Southern boys up in New York. Absolutely got fucked up on their first night. Had a meeting with Vince. Apparently, Terry Gordy fell asleep during the meeting.
Yes, Terry.
During the meeting.
During the meeting, right
put
there
him
with
out.
Vince, just passed out. He was on the sauce, way too late. That was it. The boys were just a walk and roll over.
fired.
Like, and they were fired in 2 days, and then they're like, all right. I mean, they were still
it was like the Rockers, Mary Janae and Shawn Michaels. They
got
got
fucked out
fired
on their first night, yeah.
First night as well, and then obviously Terry Gordy comes back as the executioner.
That was after his.
It's so sad that like his entire peak, he never really got to have a good WLF run. His WLF run was in a fucking hood as an executioner.
Like we talked about potential,
That was
like
after
say,
his overdose.
we talked about potential WrestleMania main events. Imagine Hogan and Gordy.
would have been.
Yeah,
Hogan and
pretty
Gordy
good.
late 80s would have been.
We say a lot about
only
Bruiser
second
Brody.
to Bruiser, yeah.
we say a lot about Bruiser Brody, but like Terry Gordy could fucking
Gordy
go.
was all. I think Gordy could have been the natural successor to fucking Dusty Rhodes in a lot of ways as well. If he'd really just got a fucking
loved drugs.
Japan. But he loved
that man loved
I said
drugs.
Japan. You said drugs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he loved-
He loved Japan. He loved drugs. Unfortunately,
Not in that order.
Yeah, I mean, like he was so young and so good, but then, yeah, just the party lifestyle really got to him. But it's really
Where would you
unfortunate.
put him in instead of Bundy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 2.
I think he would have been probably too young for it.
Yeah.
I think
Would he?
Bruiser Brody is probably the best slot for that. But yeah, like you could have. I think late 80s he would have been a fantastic
Anytime
young
up to like
monster heel.
1990 or something.
Yeah, he was having great matches in Japan up until like early
Instead of Slaughter.
early 80s. So yeah, early 90s. Sorry, so Freebirds, I think, in terms of their importance, in terms of how they pioneered how factions could
the
be
Freebirds
presented.
rule, like we talk about New
Freebirds
Day.
rule is-
New Day earlier. They
We didn't
utilized
even
it.
get to that, yeah. And that's been so well utilised. The Bloodline are using it at the moment.
Yeah.
And they use the name, which is cool as well.
Yeah.
The Freebird
Yeah,
rule.
Freebird
It's
rule.
like it's there now forever.
It's not a gimmick necessarily. Maybe it's an interesting way to look at some of the gimmicks with these factions. I don't think a faction like that could necessarily exist today, particularly with the kind of racist overtones that it had. They were very of their time, but like they drew a lot of money, massive heat. It's a pity they didn't get to have a big WLF run, but The boys just love the sauce too much.
Well, we got the WWF version in 3MB, which is.
I mean,
your
when you
number
talk
two
about the
pick.
contrast between rock band factions, like and how they're presented.
They came up. GMV came up in my head a few times when you said rock band.
Yeah, no, Freebirds were the OG rock band.
But the rock and
wrestling
roll
faction.
connection, and that never even dawned on me that they were there when it was coming to its even in its infancy. It was 84 they came in, wasn't it? 84, 83 the Freebirds were brought in. The WWF.
I think it was 84.
Yeah. So like that's the infancy of the rock and wrestling connection, because 85 is the first WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So like they could have been on that first WrestleMania card.
They would have been a big act, and
Instead of American American Express with Barry Windham
US
and
Express against
US Express, Barry Windham and
Irish Sheik and Nikolai Volkov.
IRS, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real pity. I mean, they would have slotted right in the merchandise that they would have sold.
Like just swap out the Confederate flag for the American flag, and there you go.
Yeah,
The Union flag.
the Union flag.
Remember the faction, the Union. It was Test, Big Show, Mick Foley.
Hey, stop
and
naming all my
Shamrock.
second
Was it
pick.
Ken Shamrock? And
You're
they had
just spoiling the second-
You're spoiling my second pick.
They all had 2x4s.
They're the result of the breakup of my second pick.
But the Union actually stood for stuff, isn't it? Like UNION. I can't remember what it was.
A big long spiely thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Your second pick though.
Second pick is again. I'm not sure if I like this stable.
I think you regret this pick.
And
Yeah.
I think it's because it came at a time when wrestling peaked maybe it's peaked now again, but at the time it was peaked. It was when I was watching wrestling as a kid. It was the combination of two heel stables. I don't think on screen there's ever been so many members in one faction.
there's another pick coming later. There's another pick coming
there's
later.
one coming.
Yeah.
Two actually coming later. Anyway, corporate ministry stuck him in there just for the crack.
But why?
You put in the corporate ministry.
yeah, put in the corporate ministry.
He like you.
Sorry, I completely slated them earlier.
You
How did I
slated them
miss
earlier,
this?
yeah, and I was like, haha.
I fucking hate that.
I
faction. Sorry.
don't. I Sam. Yeah. Personally, I would have just gone with the corporation.
No, let him
Sorry,
defend
let's
his pick.
don't
Let him
Let the
defend
man
his pick.
justify this combination of
Well, if you're
commerce
going-
and
if
the
you're
dark
just going-
arts.
Just going corporation, then go for the ultimate final boss version of the corporation
That
when it
wasn't the
gets
final boss
super
version.
evil corporate ministry.
That was like when Time Warner bought AOL and became Time Warner AOL, and then they kicked out WCW. It was
And then
just
they
like,
hired a load of gots.
fuck.
They hired a load of gots. And
Yeah.
There's a lot of gods.
I at the time, like it's easy with like
The higher power?
revisionist history. Yeah, but
No, the higher power
kept-
sucked
Let
at the time.
him defend it. Let
Sorry.
him defend it.
higher power. As a kid, I was enthralled by it. I thought, who is the higher power? Who the fuck's coming? Yes, it came out as Vince. It was disappointing that it was Vince, but it kept bums and seats.
The build up to
Keep
it.
my bum in seats.
Yeah.
The build up to
Oh,
it
where did
was
you go
good.
after
I
that?
started drinking
You
that
watched,
night.
no,
Yeah.
you watched
I
Raw
started
the following
drinking.
week.
I
That's
started
bullshit.
drinking that night.
You find yourself enthralled to someone else, and we enslave ourselves to win some fucking toaster.
Dropping lines. sir.
Dropping lines,
Nice.
dropping lines. Glengarry Glen Ross hitting the Watergate Theatre on the 28th, 29th, and 30th.
29th.
That's a great.
30th,
That's a
31st.
great faction.
Yeah, the Glengarry
That's
Glen
a good
Ross
faction.
faction. But yeah,
Let's
back
name
to-
some. Okay, who's in it? We got Vince, Shane, two of the most iconic people in wrestling history, for good or for evil.
Latter.
Patterson, first ever Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah.
Briscoe.
won it in Rio de Janeiro.
Undertaker's a third. There's three leaders. Undertaker, Shane, and Vince are the three leaders. Undertaker's in there as well.
Yeah.
World Wrestling Federation Champion. Triple H, World Wrestling Federation Champion.
Because DX was part of it too for a
He
while.
turned on DX and joined.
He turned on Chyna, greatest women's wrestler of all time.
You're just dropping some facts that aren't necessarily fact.
Big Boss
Shane
Man.
and Vince, the most two iconic people in wrestling of all time.
Yeah.
China, the greatest female wrestler of all lies. No.
I think Chyna's up there as the greatest female of all time. Boss Man, we've just already spoken about how
The
cool,
greatest cop gimmick of all time.
cool he was. We all love him. He's right there in front of you. There's
just-
another world champ. There's another world champ that came out of it as well.
The Rock.
Rock was kind of gone when they went corporate.
JBL.
JBL, that's it, yeah.
JBL, Ron Simmons,
Yeah.
Viscera,
Midian.
Million. Yeah,
Brood?
Gangrel, Edge, Christian.
Christian, Brood are kind of, they were hovering around but weren't official corporate ministry members.
I thought they kind of were.
They were ministry
They could have had great feuds with him. They
associates.
would have been such good foils. Like,
And they're up against Steve Austin, the greatest face.
no,
one of the greatest
I don't
faces
think
of
it's
all time.
necessarily a bad faction or a bad gimmick. I think
Thank you.
how it was booked sucked. It definitely came together too easy. You know what I mean? Like,
I came because of
It
the
was
mutual,
pure-
the mutual hatred of Steve Austin.
yeah, but it
They
was
had to come
pure
together.
Russo brilliant book.
It was. The Undertaker had
Man,
just
Russo booked
kidnapped
the act
Stephanie.
here.
like if you're the big boss man and you're just after being hung by these fucking gots who work with you, and then you're been told, sorry, we're doing a merger, you actually have to be teammates with them. They hung me like last month from a Hell in the Cell.
They kidnapped
in front of my
Stephanie.
friend's family.
I was 13 years old. I didn't think about that shit. I didn't care about that.
He's only realizing that now.
I'm watching.
You didn't care enough.
You didn't care enough. Didn't care enough.
Remember, I was in Irish college, and for the reveal, I was in Irish college, and I had to write pen to paper to a guy back home. Who the fuck was the higher power? And I was waiting, and the letter came.
And he's just wrote on, it's me.
It said,
It's me, Dunphy.
Vince McMahon is the higher power.
It was me all along.
So disappointed. Because it was all era. Oh, it's the Jackal. It's fucking.
Who did you think?
Chris Daniels.
Who did you think it was going to be?
Snake. I thought Jake
I
the
would have
Snake.
loved it was Jake the Snake. For whatever reason at the time, I think it was because I knew he was kind of coming in to be pushed as a main eventer, and I couldn't figure out how they were going to introduce him, and he was the only person I knew that was coming in. I was like, it's probably going to be Dr. Death Steve Williams.
And you're getting your news off.
That's
You're
gonna
getting
be
your news off teletext. All the rumors are
I
coming.
know, I was still reading the Power Slam magazines at the
Slam,
time,
of
but
course,
like...
There was talk of Chris
Still a
Daniels,
lot
but
of
once
guys
again,
get-
like in hindsight, you're going, that'd be cool.
But then you look
like,
at
The
Chris Daniels in
Jackal, the
99.
Jackal was the biggest rumor, I thought.
The Jackal would have been great, and I think Don Callis would have carried it fantastically. I mean, I would love to see like someone like a Kevin Sullivan, or like you said, a Jake Roberts, someone just to carry that
it's a
thing.
shame
and
Kevin
pop it.
Sullivan, like I know he passed
The fact
away
that it was
recently.
Vince is still so incomprehensible to me. Even if that had been Stephanie's heel turn, as opposed to like, a couple of months further down the line when she did turn heel.
Yeah.
She turned heel that December. It probably would have been much better to turn her heel maybe then.
Yeah.
That would have been more satisfying.
She got in.
It's
She
Vince.
got kidnapped and got
like
converted. Basically,
Yeah, it's like Vince has been feuding for himself for the past 5 months.
When you mentioned Kevin Sullivan, obviously he's passed away recently.
Army of Darkness.
Yeah, like that would have been amazing to have him in the ministry. And just a quick question: is he one of the biggest ever wrestlers to never wrestle in the WWF?
Well, he did
would-
wrestle
it would
there,
have-
but not
it
in
would
any
have
kind
been-
of featured way. No,
Did he wrestle there?
I think he was there in the early 80s. I think
Was he?
Okay.
Before he went to
Or was that
Florida.
WWF?
It probably would have been. Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to double check that.
So he went to Florida then from there.
Florida was mostly where he
Did his Army of Darkness.
did his Army of Darkness gimmick, and he had a lot of really he had a lot of heat down there, big
Yeah.
feuds.
I
watched-
think we should just throw it out to the. I know the three marks are not into corporate ministry, but I think there will be corporate ministry fans.
Do you think so?
I-
I have no
TikTok.
doubt
I-
there'll
I
be corporate
think people
ministry
will come
fans
back
on
and go,
TikTok, because one thing we know from
Stop,
TikTok
no, before you
is
finish.
they're all nerds.
They're all into guts and
Yeah.
fucking
And this guy.
And
Bitcoin.
this guy. Everyone who
Hogan.
comments on our TikToks
They're crypto
is
bros.
constantly negative.
No, they're not.
They're,
No,
they're
there's
going to
some
love the
very
crap.
positive
No,
stuff.
they're not.
Sorry,
they're
I'm
not.
not. I'm not on TikTok.
Just making shit up.
I just send all the shit when people are giving out about you to you.
Okay, all right. That's okay.
Like, what is this guy on?
I just think WWF is doing their first ever proper like Satanist faction, and I think
And last.
the merger of that Satanist faction
With the corporate.
with literally
Yeah, that makes sense. Corporate America. Corporate America.
It makes
sold
sense.
It's an allegory for corporate
Yeah,
America.
It would have
you
made
ever
more
seen,
sense if the Undertaker
what's
took
that
over the
movie,
corporation.
Devil.
And it makes sense in hindsight with
Devil's Advocate, is that?
who Vince McMahon turned out to be. So it kind of makes
devil?
sense.
Exactly.
But you know,
Undertaker wasn't the biggest devil in the.
no. But if Undertaker becomes corporate Undertaker, like we got
That would've
corporate,
been cool.
we got corporate Kane.
Yeah, corporate
A
Undertaker.
corporate Undertaker, and he cuts off the hair. He's coming out in suits. It's like he looks like Rick Rude when Rick Rude started wearing suits.
I'm going to stand by it. Corporate ministry, an important faction for professional wrestling. I couldn't even get out.
Just to give-
it's important.
What are we talking about
What
here?
stemmed from it?
What is the
What came out of it?
the question? Oh, sorry. Well,
Question, as in who? As
no,
in
no,
Jim
the
Neidhart.
today's topic was name the most important or your
Most
favorite.
important.
Like, what's the modern day equivalent? If the House of Black had a merger with the Elite, is that?
Yeah,
a
I think
modern day-
that would be interesting.
How would that work? How would you put that?
House of Black with Shane Taylor Promotions. That's where.
Why Shane Taylor Promotions?
I don't know. That seems like the most
Just get
corporate.
another
just
faction
seems
in
like the
there.
most corporate name. But then again, I remember now the Elite are doing this whole.
Undertaker is there going around. He's doing his Satanist gimmick, and he's getting people in to do the whole Satanist faction. And then, coincidentally, at the same time,
They're crucifying people.
There's a faction of tree vampires.
Yeah.
So I might as well link up with them. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were. It was about Austin. It was a combined effort to get rid of Austin.
And was Austin like the main person they were feuding
Yeah.
with, really? Because I felt like DX would have been great foils for them. But
No, it was
obviously,
all about
DX
Austin.
had folded into it as well.
Yeah.
No, it was about Austin. It was a combined effort to get.
I thought it was all a mess.
It was totally. But that was the attitude era. It was total mess.
Yeah, there's a lot of mess stuff going on.
But we all
99
agree,
particularly was the most
important.
Russo-brained year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
All right, let's move on.
Well, number 2, I mentioned Rick Rude, and he was part of a big faction in the Attitude Era known as D-Generation X.
Break it down.
I will break it down. There's a few different iterations. Obviously, my favourite being Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Hornswoggle. But
Wasn't expecting that.
that was obviously the best.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Grim Reaper incarnation.
Yeah,
the
what
dead
was
nail
that?
of that group.
Yeah.
I got a high five off Shawn Michaels during that era.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. Did you get a high five off Hornswoggle?
I got down by the aisle in the
high,
Tree
was it?
Arena or Point Depot, whatever it was called, and put my hand out like a child and got a
Class.
I think I was definitely the tallest person there.
Yeah, I think that's why he
You were
came.
27.
That's why he came to Kilkenny. He was looking for his long last friend.
Who gave him that?
We met him once outside. We got in a fight with him outside a bar in Syracuse, didn't we?
We did,
At
yeah.
one
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
They thought we were Marines.
Yeah.
He was lipping off.
He had a black eye then, and after giving a good black eye.
Morro
that
punched
was
the
he.
smile off his face.
Yeah, it was
We all have Michael stories.
Yeah. But the two incarnations of D-Generation X, particularly the first one, I remember just being blown away by Shawn Michaels, Triple H, China, and Rick Rude. And at the time, I was kind of like, Rick Rude doesn't really fit in here.
And he's doing a heater role. Like,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
so unlike what you'd seen him doing.
Yeah.
He's in a suit. He's covering up that
and he
ravishingness
looked
of his
badass.
body.
And I didn't, even as a child, I didn't realise, as I subsequently came to realise when I got in a real life fight with him, that Rick Rude is generally regarded as one of the toughest men in the business.
Oh, yeah,
so
big
like
time.
him being in that role at that time actually had a load of legitimacy that I certainly wasn't aware of as a kid watching it.
No. I remember watching live like some of their antics and being like, snickering away because you're a young lad and you shouldn't be seeing this. Or they have a promo with Sergeant Slaughter and then they get helmets on and they put windshield wipers on because Sergeant Slaughter has a lisp. And then they put the wipers on it. So when he's shouting at them, the wipers are going across like this. And I was like, that's so funny. He has a lisp.
Also running around primary school telling people to suck it.
Yeah. That is the
Teachers
most...
not knowing what is going on.
Yeah.
Going on. And that's the thing, it was so juvenile and it was so sexually orientated. It was really weird then to see Rick Rude playing this kind of like stoic silent thing when you're going like, he was the only person in the cartoon Hulk Hogan era whose like gimmick was, rubbing his crotch into like a man's face, putting his arse in a woman's face,
Putting their
like,
face on the back of his
gyrating.
ass.
His gimmick was gyrating around the place.
Yeah. And now look at him.
And now look at him. Now it's like when he does something suggestive and juvenile. Now it's really going to land because Rude has it in him, but he never did really.
Yeah, and like they're doing the State of the
They
Union
didn't
address.
want him though. They didn't want him in it. He was put in, wasn't
Was he?
Yeah,
I thought they wanted him in it.
they wanted the two of them. Rick was put in.
Because Rick was exceptionally close friends with the Hearts, so he probably felt like a plant. But then again, like he was probably there to keep an eye on them as well. Like Triple H or Shawn Michaels were not going to mount off to Rick Rude.
But Triple H is like he's a teetotaler, isn't he? So he was the one, wasn't he, to
He could
keep
do it
Shawn
if you
Michaels?
drinks that lad.
Yeah.
Wasn't he the one to keep Shawn Michaels on the straight and narrow? Well, like obviously he failed.
Well,
but
no,
wasn't
Shawn
he?
Michaels was the world champ, and Triple H wanted to become a world champion top guy, so he just hung out with Shawn Michaels.
Just question, like, teetotaler in terms of no alcohol and drugs and so on, but that man has taken industrial amounts of steroids throughout his life. So I don't know if you can call him a teetotaler.
Well, I meant he
Party
doesn't-
drugs,
he-
recreational.
recreation, I suppose.
He abstains from alcohol. He just takes poppers.
Way to get
He only takes poppers.
way to get,
That's
the
how he gets
podcast,
physique
way to
like
get the
that.
podcast absolutely screwed legally, Morro. We're done.
No,
allegedly.
Boy, because
Allegedly.
Now we're set.
Triple H allegedly takes poppers.
Now we're done.
Going to judge him?
Allegedly.
But then when Shawn Michaels, fucks his back up at Royal Rumble, he goes up WrestleMania 14, loses to Austin, and then he goes away. And you go, all right, this is Triple H's time to step up. And then Triple H does what Triple H does and surrounds himself with other people to prop him up.
Again, another great version of Triple H when he had...
X-Pac and the New Age Outlaws.
That's when he really clicked.
Yeah.
And
he struggled up to that point.
You're talking about the Brood going in with the Ministry. Like the New Age Outlaws going with DX. It just seemed absolutely perfect.
Everything was perfect. The total opposite of Dunphy's last pick.
Yeah, everything slots into place perfectly.
They were trying to get Austin.
Yeah, this would be like
they wanted to get Austin.
It'd be like Triple H.
Midian, Pat Patterson.
It's wrestling. You can make anything work. You just have to write it.
It'd be like Triple H becoming the head of the Nation of Domination.
Owen Hart was Brian there.
Yeah, but
pretty
Triple
well.
H seems a lot
Like-
more
like-
racist than Owen Hart.
That's like
allegedly.
Owen Hart and the Nation of Domination made absolutely no sense. It kind of worked because Owen is just so good and he was with good guys.
Hey, we're not going back on the carpet. We've done it. Okay?
Yeah.
We've done it. It's been
But no,
done.
we're using that as a counterpoint as to why the second iteration
New-
works
works
so
yeah.
well. Yeah.
So they go on and they create catchphrases. You know,
Break it down.
They were one of the hottest things in wrestling.
Totally.
You know, probably only second to Stone Cold that year.
Their entrance was new. Like, you know, it was intercut live footage with, you know, this riot happening. Had that Rage Against the Machine vibe of it. They're coming out and you could,
a massive vibe about it.
everyone could do Road Dodge stick. You know, got
Billy
them
Gunn's shtick.
got them over as the tag team.
Triple
The
H
only
shtick.
problem that I have with DX is all those people. We talked about the, like, you know, Nation went on to do big things and stuff. Without DX in WWF, they didn't really
All
go on
kind of failed.
bar Triple H.
Yeah, I mean,
They had an ass man.
Yeah, they had an ass man who went on to become the one
always-
and only, who went on to become
Billy Gunn got a brief singles push in the summer of '99 when he won the King of the Ring and he got programmed with The Rock, but they didn't try enough with it.
And they did that weird thing when they were pushing Billy and Road Dogg separately, and then they pushed him into the wrong title scene where Road Dogg won the Intercontinental title and Billy went feuding for the
Yeah,
hardcore
that's pure
title.
Russo, like swerve fucking booking. It's like
When Road Dogg was kind of a hardcore wrestler, like he could totally get
he
away
was
with
brilliant
that.
at
And
it.
he was good at it, yeah.
He was a hardcore champion.
and
he was
Billy-
the hardcore
yeah.
champion, but then he got put into the Intercontinental picture in the lead up to WrestleMania 15.
Yeah,
switched
and Billy,
for no
who
reason.
was going for the Intercontinental title, inexplicably got put into hardcore.
And then you had X-Pac kind of teaming with Kane sometimes.
X-Pac had that thing with Tori as well.
Tory, yeah.
He also had his own group.
I always thought
X Factor.
Spin-off group.
Got everything I
the
ever
X Factor.
wanted. I wanna be.
that was Uncle Cracker saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah, Uncle Cracker.
I always thought with Kane he should have changed the color of his outfit to DX colors.
That'd be
I thought
cool.
Yeah, I was always waiting for that because like
Because X-Pac went red, didn't he?
yeah.
DX also, like, I mean, all gifted orators on the mic and whatever, and they're very good at actually, they're very underrated in terms of speech development because they were the first wrestlers in the locker room. It took a bit of time to sit Kane down and teach him how to speak.
You don't took
teach
away
him
his
how to-
voice box.
that's what
teach him how to pronounce his words and how to
was
make the
kind
best
of-
of his
That
voice
was actually
box.
very kind of them.
Yeah.
They got a lot of stick for being bullies, for
No.
being juvenile.
Like the one bad thing about them teaching Ken to speak is he's now
He hasn't shut the fuck up.
Because he shut the fuck up ever since.
Yeah, he studied corporate law.
Suck it. But yeah, one of the most monumental factions really helped with that transition to the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
They were the biggest like emblematic Attitude Era faction. When you think Attitude Era, you go, oh yeah, DX.
Yeah.
They signified everything about that era.
And I think they fell down when they brought them back. I thought it would have been better if they brought them back earlier in 2002, but before you had Triple H turn on Shawn Michaels. Now we
agree.
have an all-timer SummerSlam 2002 match. Shawn Michaels goes on to win the Elimination Chamber, become a champion in his shit pants, and then Shawn Michaels has a great run as well. But I always thought that iteration of DX
but they brought him back in Kid PG era where you knew it was just from merch selling. It was really annoyed me.
And they kind of leaned into that. There was a lot more comedy and like admittedly
They had the
bad
glow
comedy.
sticks.
some
juvenile comedy.
Forced
some of
comedy.
their comedy was good.
What did you think when they came back at the end?
Like there was some skits that were good. I mean, that
I
one, like
couldn't
that one,
stand
Shawn Michaels super kicking his bed down the corridor. I think that's an all time.
Poor Shawn
Yeah,
Spears.
that's actually fantastic.
Getting them back together was a really good angle against the Spirit Squad. I mean, like that was peak McMahon's been overexposed, but actually Shane and Vince were pretty good foils for Shawn.
Shane, Vince, and Big Show in the Hell in a Cell.
I just would have liked to have seen that version of Triple H and Shawn Michaels be a little bit generous and pick like 2, 3 young lads, young
That'd be
girls,
great.
Well, remember when
and
they
have
did,
them with them.
Remember when they did Survivor Series and Hardy Boys and CM Punk with them?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, that's your new DX.
I felt the exact same, and I remember watching that pay-per-view. That was the most excited I'd been about a Survivor Series team in years. I still think they're one of the best Survivor Series teams, but I would have loved to see them all just like
Show up
Yeah.
weekly, yeah.
and then
they were
they
doing
go
all
on,
that. There were two. I felt because at this stage we're all in on it. We know what wrestling is, and I kind of felt like when they'd be burying lads at that point, I was like, come on, like you're the owner's son-in-law, like you
senior-
shouldn't be
yeah,
burying
leaders
lads
when
like
they're
this.
throwing Spirit Squad into a crate and then like throwing sent back to OVW.
And like it was funny when at that Survivor Series,
Kind of seems more cruel.
Shawn
now.
Michaels knocked out Mike Knox and then did the whole.
Who is that?
Who is he? Do I pin this guy?
And they did something
I
to
don't
Chris
like that.
Masters when he came back, and he was obviously not on the. It wasn't as big as he was, and they kind of made reference to it, the fact that he wasn't on steroids anymore. Stevie Richards makes comments on it. He comments on a lot of things.
Yeah,
actually.
like I don't know. I mean, they weren't obviously as bad as they were in the late 90s in terms of behavior, but there is stories of them, kind of in that area holding down certain wrestlers a little bit. Apparently, they were the ones when CM Punk had his tryout in 2005, kind of buried him for his physique and work rate. Punk was an obvious person to join DX. He would have been the cool, they could have spun great.
Did you
feuds
hear
out
the
of that.
Freddie Prinze Jr. Talking about Hade Vanson? And they were running the promos for Hade Vanson, and Triple H was the one that piped up because they
Buried him, yeah.
He just Undertaker needed just a short feud. It wasn't a WrestleMania feud that a lot of us thought. Undertaker needed a short feud to go over someone to get him prepared, and they're going to bring in Hade Vanson. And they shot like 3-4 different promos. They were airing them every week, and then Triple H was like, "We're seriously not going with this guy, are we?" And then Hade Vanson gave up the business when he got fired.
Gone, yeah.
But like it goes to show, this lovely Papa Paul as we all have now.
Don't think that at all.
Back then,
That's a very
back then-
carefully curated image. I
It
think.
is.
Yeah.
And like he's all about
Allegedly.
indie wrestling and all that, but he buried the likes of CM Punk, buried the likes of Hade Vanson, who was great in FWA, had a fucking phenomenal moveset. I was delighted when he got signed up, but then
I mean, there was a lot of guys there. I mean, there was guys he obviously couldn't bury, but there was a lot of guys. I mean,
Triple H to
Punk-
me
Punk
is
was
Nash and
definitely a
Hall's
victim of that.
driver. That's all he'll ever be.
he's driving the industry now.
He's good at driving.
So DX is my number 2 pick. Just to reiterate, you went with Chaos and
Chaos at 3. I went with Evolution at 2.
Evolution at 2.
I went with Nation Domination at 3 and the Fabulous Freebirds at 2.
Dangerous Alliance 3, Corporate Ministry 2.
And I went with New Day and Degeneration X. Do you want to regale us with the tales of your number 1?
My number 1 pick, and I actually think possibly the best number 1 pick. Speaking of numbers, it's the 4 Horsemen.
Quadruple Bypass.
The Quadruple Bypass. It's 4 of us.
It is always fun doing it, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
It is so much fun.
I went through a phase of like doing that in every photo that was in. Because because like as a guy you have like the finger point,
Yeah.
you have the
I love the
big one.
fist.
This is the big one.
the fist is a big one, but like
No, this is a new one.
I do that now. I know
Kona Crush.
The corner crush.
I noticed myself in photos recently, like
My hands just do this.
do that, and I'm like,
No.
what the fuck?
I started doing this a lot for some reason.
This
Back
one?
at the-
Yeah.
You started doing that with the anime kind of tongue out, kind of.
What? I don't do that. Don't
He
listen
does.
to
He
You're
does.
getting brainwashed,
He
John.
does. 4, yeah.
So I went to 4 Horsemen number 1. My favourite version of the 4 Horsemen would be what I'd kind of classify as the J.J. Dillon years.
Not the Fortune version of 4 Horsemen. They started doing that.
No. So the J.J. Dillon years, like the mid to late 80s. And there's kind of 2 versions of it then, but me and Dunphy did it on our all podcast schedule for 2 Falls.
2 Falls.
We did a Lex
What does that even mean?
It's the number 2.
It's the number 2. We did a Lex Luger multiple episode arc actually because Dunphy was obviously a massive Lex Luger arc.
boy.
Now, there was involved in the research of that. I ended up watching an absolute shitload of 80s 4 Horsemen stuff, and that when they brought in Barry Windham,
Class.
late 80s, that version of Windham, Tully, Arn, and Flair with J.J. Dillon.
That was the
That whole era.
that
That's
was
the vintage.
That was the version that got the Hall of Fame nod, wasn't it?
yes,
Yeah, didn't look poor Ole Anderson.
all it didn't. Yeah, now the
What
previous
about
version,
fucking Paul Roma?
he was never an official member.
He
of it.
was.
He was.
was.
Absolutely.
In what?
You can whitewash history all you want, Morro, but you can't deny that Paul Roma was in the 4 Horsemen.
But then
He must be the worst member of it. I can't think of any member of the
Mongo.
anyone who's a member of the 4
Mongo.
Horsemen.
Mongo McMichaels.
Mongo McMichaels.
You think so?
Yeah.
Nah, he had like pedigree though, still from his American football days.
Mongo.
He just,
wasn't
he
the
just
best.
sucked as a wrestler, but yeah, he.
But like even
I
the
thought
initial
Roma. I think
version-
Roma's underrated. Paul Roma as wrestler.
That's
underrated.
cool. You man. Yeah,
There's
do, you
another
all
guy,
think
yeah.
he's do you just think he's shit?
But also
Just
then
incredibly bland.
unmemorable.
But not bad actually. You wouldn't be like, oh shit, Paul Roma, like. But you,
fuck it, it's Paul again.
You wouldn't be mad excited about Paul Roma.
I'm sitting in Clears having a pint, and Paul Roma walks in. Oh fuck,
Paul Roma walks in here. Here, do you want to hear about that time I was in the Four Horsemen?
And I'd be like, Paul, I'd be the only guy who defended you. The only guy.
But even how they initially formed with their attack on Dusty and breaking his leg or ankle or whatever it was, and you mentioned great War Games matches. They were pioneers of the War Games.
They were pioneers
matches.
of factions.
Pioneers of factions, pioneers of War Game matches. They draped in gold. You said it earlier on. They were draped in gold.
Yes, sir.
They had iconic feuds with Dusty.
They had the world
Sting.
title. Paulie Dangerously never had the world title.
There you go. But they had iconic feuds with Dusty, Sting, Steamboat,
Road
Lex
Warriors?
Luger, Road Warriors. You fucking name it.
And
like.
in a way that was like, I think very, like with the Freebirds, and actually with a lot of the factions that we've discussed, they really tap into something in the zeitgeist at the time. I think for any faction to really function as well as it can.
But like what you said with the Freebirds, they lived it as well.
They lived it all the time, and the Horsemen were the same. But you're talking about this is like peaking of fucking 80s.
Tony Montana.
Corporate greed is good. America.
The oil boom of Texas and
exactly J.R. Ewing's the biggest fucking TV character. Like there was
Ministry.
There was what?
Corporate Ministry.
No, man, no, you're alright.
Evil.
But they really
good,
epitomised that, like private jets, multimillionaire limousines,
Rolex watches,
the champagne,
Excess.
greed is good.
And they gave me two of my favourite things ever in wrestling, and they both involved J.J. Dillon and Lex Luger. And it's a gimmick that's used in match finishes, was used in the Rhea Live one recently. So the manager throws in the steel chair to help the guy and it backfires, and Luger lost the US title because of it. But then also when they were doing that bunkhouse kind of battle royale and the Four Horsemen had agreed that JJ Dillon was going to win it,
so good.
And then it comes down to Dillon and Luger's in the Horsemen, and Luger's like
best member.
just dumps him out, and
so good.
And it starts his exit and Barry Windham coming in, so they just did a lot of great stuff.
And they had longevity, like when you consider they were in WCW, like
Dean Malenko joined them, I think, in 1998 or 9.
Redacted joined them.
Redacted was there.
He was there.
They lived the gimmick as well. They
Yeah.
lived the gimmick.
Yeah.
They probably all couldn't
And
afford
do
it
you
as
know
much
what?
as Flair could, but they
you
all
know what? as well-
Flair couldn't afford it either.
Do you know what as well, though? In comparison to Evolution, their suits fit.
Yeah, they had some tidy tailoring.
Their suits were the right size.
When even when the Brainbusters, Aaron and Tully went over to WWF, like it was it's cool in
they went as the Horsemen then for a while and kind of didn't instantly replace them. But they did bring in guys, we've seen the later versions with Redacted and...
Yeah, but seeing
AEW
Tully
kinda-
and Aaron outside of the Horseman gimmick, you're just kind of like, oh.
The Heenan family, I mean, like a great WWF faction from the 80s. Like, I mean,
Haku,
they plugged
Andre.
right into that, and it was like, these are good faction wrestlers. And I think a little bit of Horseman Shine was in that run because they, for two obviously kind of Jim Crockett Promotions guys, so associated with the NWA,
Come in and win the
various
titles
NWA
very
promotions.
quickly.
They came in straight in, and Vince booked them really well. And they had a really good run there for a year and a half.
I also felt like AEW missed the boat when they had Tully and Aaron, and they were teasing and teasing that it's kind of coming some way to bring them all together. It never happened.
And they never did. I thought the Pinnacle was going to be. The Pinnacle was kind of that was
I felt that was more like
modern day
Danielson.
counterpart of Evolution and the Four Horsemen. And I thought actually the members of it were great. They had a lot.
Bar Sean Spears, I was very.
I was on board with Spears.
He's all right.
You can have Spears.
You need someone like that.
someone to eat a pin,
Yeah. I just I would have maybe even put Sammy Guevara.
But it was
in
great to see Tully in. I wouldn't have put something
well.
very near it, but it was great to see Tully in a group like that. Like
Sammy.
I think it was it's a good modern day equivalent. Again,
Would you have liked to
faction that
see?
didn't really go anywhere.
Because there was talk of Flair going over to WWF a bit earlier, so Flair going over with say Tully and Aaron in
do the Four
'89
Horsemen there.
and do the Three Horsemen or whatever,
feed them
or
Hogan.
like if
1989 WWF roster. You bring him over. Who's doing the Barry Windham part?
who's the
Barry
fourth?
Windham?
Who's the fourth?
Perfect.
He was there. He was. He briefly came in as the Widowmaker in 1989. But
So you could have done the Four Horsemen in '89,
you actually could have done it if you got
Perfect.
Flair. You could have got the other three.
which would have been WrestleMania 4.
And you just do it all
Five.
Those five.
Yeah.
precincts.
They could have feuded with Savage there, that would have been Savage.
He's a heel at the time. But still, Dusty was still in there. The Ultimate Warrior was heating up. There was a lot of people to
there was
work
anyone
with.
you want,
You could have plugged in even Kurt Hennig with them at that point as well.
And
Kinda
actually
worry-
someone
it
who
does-
did become a member,
Mr. Perfect.
Sid.
But it does kind of, when you're talking
Sid
about like
wasn't there in
Warrior,
89.
like I can't really imagine Warrior.
No, Sid was in WCW.
He's part of that kind of
Oh, he was,
cartoony.
Yeah, well, that was the thing when Ric Flair signed with WWF. Like Vince booked him and Ultimate Warrior on a load of house shows together, and because he was thinking this would be a hot feud on television.
jars, like.
And yeah, Flair apparently just said to Vince, he's like, "What we just
Yeah.
this guy's
'Cause what
we-
makes-
no,
what
he didn't
makes
bury Warrior, I don't
NWA
think, but he was like, we just do not have chemistry."
89 Bret Hart.
89 Bret Hart and the Horsemen would have been
Dressed
kinda
as a
cool.
cowboy.
Because he used to be, and the whole
There's
point
no
was
room for
he's
cowboys in the Horsemen.
when he was going to be an LJN,
You know, a rich
Ironically
cowboy.
enough,
Ironically.
when he was going to be an LJN, they were going to give him a horse.
Yeah.
Bret Hart was going to have a horse.
He's in a cowboy movie, isn't he? Or that
Lonesome, he was
never
in
shot.
Lonesome Dove.
Lonesome Dove, yeah.
He went off to shoot Lonesome Dove after he lost his title to Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12.
Found a smile.
Found a smile.
So the Four Horsemen is your
Friends with a
number
horse.
one pick,
Four Horsemen. Four Horsemen, number one pick.
Mr. Morton.
Speaking of cowboy Bret Hart, my number one pick is I think his finest hour in a career full of finest hours, but a faction that didn't last an awful long, but like it really had an impact when it did. Probably my pound for pound my favorite faction of all time. 1997 incarnation of the Hart Foundation, which was Bret,
Fantastic pick.
Owen Hart, British Bulldog David Boy Smith, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and Loose Cannon Brian Pillman. Arguably, five guys who were still. Bret particularly was at his hottest. Owen and Davey were fantastic. Pillman was coming off the back of major injuries, but he was such a fucking live wire presence in that group. He plugged into it perfectly. And Jim Neidhart, obviously not quite where he was, but still a good, intimidating enforcer.
Grey heater
Who could work. These were five guys. This was a faction which was based completely in history. They'd all, obviously the Harts were a family. David Boy Smith's an in-law. Pillman and Neidhart, and Neidhart's also an in-law. Pillman's trained in the Hart family dungeon in Calgary. He's wrestled for Stampede, Stu Hart's promotion, which they've all wrestled for over the years. And what was really novel about them in this era, really at the dawn of the Attitude Era, Bret had turned heel, and they all had turned heel. Well, actually, Pillman and Owen and Bulldog were already kind of heels, so they pretty much stayed the same. But they were only heels in the United States of America. There were baby faces all around the world.
Much like Conor Hurley was only a face in Kilkenny, but a heel.
Everywhere else. I mean, look,
Cork and Kildare.
Check out our last podcast.
this principle still works in wrestling, but I don't think anybody had really interrogated it and done something so interesting, so fresh as the Hart Foundation did in 97. This idea that Bret Hart as a character was disillusioned with how America, and it was kind of perfect, lightning in the bottle, talking about the zeitgeist, but the American fans were starting to turn on the conventional white meat babyface type heroes.
Even Owen in real life, if you read Bret's book, Owen had problems with the way the product in itself was.
did.
We talked about Degeneration X and what the
Yeah.
juvenile shit that they were doing, that which would appeal to juveniles like me. But like personally, they had problems with the way the storylines were going.
Well,
so like they brought their real life annoyance to screen.
It evolved so naturally as well.
Yeah.
And obviously the feud with Austin and all the hatred there.
Yeah, and
feud
then
with Michaels, all the hatred there.
They plugged in some really good people to feud with. It's a real pity that like we were a couple of months away from getting the classic version of DX going against the Hart Foundation, which we kind of missed out on.
And also getting Austin's first world title win. It being against Michaels would have been better if it had come against Hart at WrestleMania 14. You know what I mean? If that Hart Foundation storyline had continued up to WrestleMania 14 and Bret Hart loses to Austin, would have been
But it also
cathartic.
But there's something beautiful about that was lovely. There's something beautiful about Bret being, whatever, bitter Bret and angry, getting so frustrated that he needs all his boys around him. That they're there.
That the American fans had split them apart, and they had fought each other for the entertainment of these bloodthirsty.
But it justifies Bret as well. That look, I know I've gone kind of evil. I'm off.
So justified, and the best villains and best heels are justified. Like, they're people who genuinely think what they're doing is right. I mean,
or ones that you can see a modicum of,
But you can see what the moral conundrum is for the character, and you can see what that person's actually like. It's so much more nuanced and detailed now. We're used to getting good, compelling villainous characters in wrestling now. Drew McIntyre's been playing a fucking
modern
banger
hangman.
all year with this modern hangman. They're justified, but Bret Hart was that at the time, and his motivations were always clear, and what was great about him as well, he and the whole faction, like obviously they've got they're bedded in by going, oh my god, these guys have known each other for years. We know exactly who they are and what their relationships to each other are. But they felt so They felt so justified, and they felt consistent with what their characters were before.
Bret Hart's best year ever on a
no,
microphone.
I was just about to ask. Do you think that was the peak year for all of those wrestlers? Because like after that, no one really.
I'd say.
I will say. I don't think it was for.
Owen had 94.
I think it was Owen at 94. I think that was Owen's peak year, but 97 was genuinely Bret's peak year.
He's definitely his best year on a microphone.
One of his best in ring.
And one of his best in ring.
Injuries unfortunately slowed down. When you think about it, that Heart Foundation started in March and were done by November.
I know, it's nuts.
And they had one of the hottest runs, one of the best ever pay-per-views, Canadian Stampede.
Yeah.
It's the perfect combination of a load of things. Like that moment when at Montreal Screwjob, when Bret is coming out and you've got that really tense music in the background, and it's Bret coming out of his locker room, and he's got the three Bulldog, not Pillman isn't there, I think, but Bulldog and Anvil are there. Owen's not there either, I don't think.
When did Pillman pass?
And they're kind of walking down.
Brian Pillman passed during that run.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
He's that kind of precipitated the end of them. Obviously, Montreal Screwjob didn't help things.
But he's walking out, but they're walking out to this super, and it feels so perfect because we don't know, like it's the same time with the blend of what's real, what's fake. You don't really know. You're just kind of getting dirt sheet stuff. And it's exactly what could have been for AEW, that whole thing, if they had. It was such a callback to that when they had the Young Bucks bullshit going on with Kenny and everything. It felt like a Heart Foundation, felt like a this us versus them type thing, which just gets you more into the corner of one of your favorite stars.
Absolutely, and I think they were a massive part of precipitating the turnaround of fortune of WWF. They were getting their asses kicked by WCW at the time, but WWF had done kind of like the first incarnation of Nation of Domination was a kind of lame attempt at an NWO-esque act. And they kind of landed on what that act was. It's a bunch of it's your pissed off world champion. And, it's a pissed off roster of wrestlers training Stu Hart's dungeon who hate America and its values and think they're better than everyone in the company. And that was one of the hottest heel runs, hottest faction runs I think any company has ever seen. It's insane to me. Sorry, just to finish on this fucking point, but like the fact that they were the hottest faction WWF, I think at that time had ever produced, in history, that ever produced. They ran for a couple of months and then they could have picked that faction up in early 1998 in WCW and ran that faction against the NWO and mixed things up. Amazing. Now, you wouldn't have had Owen, you wouldn't have had Pillman because he's dead, but you could have
had Benoit.
You could have plugged Benoit, Jericho in there fucking easily.
Yeah, absolutely.
Easily. There was a lot of wrestlers that could have been plugged
money
in.
right there.
That's how bad WCW was in terms of its booking at that point. A booking basket case. How do you not go, okay, well, our NWO act is getting a little bit stale. We literally have the hottest faction from WWE. We've got all of them.
We've got Shawn Michaels' best friends here.
We can build on that. Yeah, we've got Michael's best friends here to go up against as well. Yeah. It's perfect. And how they didn't fucking do it, Hogan, is beyond me.
Bischoff. Russo.
Anyway, Heart Foundation, I think, one of the best, and pound for pound in terms of their limited amount of time and what they actually achieved, probably, from my mind, best faction of all time.
Yeah. Can't argue.
I would have possibly chosen Heart Foundation. It was a draft, so I couldn't choose.
You chose the Odysseys, didn't you?
You were the first pick, weren't you?
Yes.
So, that's how much that Heart Foundation meant to you, is that, like, any of the factions that we mentioned already, you would place them over them. Or any faction that ever gets mentioned on this, you place them as the quintessential faction.
Like, they never got to burn out. They were, like, literally five guys at the peak of their powers, massively hot acts.
I think that's a big one, is that they never got burned out.
Not even slightly. And keep in mind, like, Pillman wasn't in the best nick at the time. Bret was injured quite a lot, which he fed into his character very well.
He was in a wheelchair.
Wheelchair Bret was just comedy genius. It was so good.
Tried to recreate with Kurt Angle, sure. Remember wheelchair Kurt Angle?
And Linda McMahon.
Oh yeah. The catatonic.
Linda McMahon.
Do you want to go with your number one?
Number one for me is
faction of all time.
So this is not my. It's kind of similar to Nash a little bit.
I really wanted to pick this one.
Yeah, like they are so. Wait, well, you could have.
I know, but I couldn't put number one above the Horsemen.
Yeah, okay.
We picked in that order.
But it's weird. All these factions kind of link into each other.
Yeah.
It's like they all influence. Like Horsemen influences so many other factions. Yeah. And this faction is absolutely influenced by. I mean, geez, where do you start? But I suppose NWO, Click, you got all the little things. It's Bullet Club. I won't pretend to be a Bullet Club historian. That's this guy over here. But Bullet Club definitely got me into New Japan Pro Wrestling. When AJ was the leader, I was very much watching New Japan on, I suppose, all their pay-per-views. When Kenny was their leader, I was knee deep in New Japan. Self Nash be texting. I was using his login code to New Japan World.
What is it?
But going back, like how
what is the login code?
If the two of you throw me a $5 a month, I'll give it to you. Actually, the website is kind of under reconstruction at the moment. It's a shit show. Yeah,
well, I'm not watching it anymore. But they are so influential because of the Bullet Club. We have AEW, and I think that makes them a top pick. Obviously, Fergal Devitt founded them. He was a up and coming wrestler who needed a bit of space. He wasn't quite getting over. Sorry, he was getting over to fans, but they weren't pushing him in any way that was going to assist him. So he got a few boys around him, created the Bullet Club.
Used American wrestling tactics in Japan,
yeah, which made tons of sense.
Which actually is really funny because the Bullet Club are heavily influenced by the NWO, who the idea of the NWO was stolen from New Japan.
It
was, yeah. They ran an invasion angle with, who was the company? It was like
Was it FMW?
I don't think it was FMW. I think it was like a shoot style company.
UWF.
UWFI. And
Was that where Sakabura was and all that?
Yeah, it's Sakuraba.
And they did an invasion angle, which New Japan had booked, and Eric Bischoff saw that and was inspired
and created the NWO. And then Bullet Club get even down to their merch.
Yeah,
super influenced by NWO. Too sweet.
Yeah. So and in terms of longevity, like they're still going today. They're still selling t-shirts,
and their influence in 3 different companies still.
It's insane. It's insane.
They're still all over the place. And even WWE tried to piggyback on it with Balor Club and the OC. Yeah. So
and of course did it in the most lame fucking Vince McMahon brain way possible.
But it just goes to show that it's that much in the wrestling zeitgeist. And obviously the amount of guys now who've been in Bullet Club is fairly ridiculous at this stage.
But most of the current bloodline now, it was Gorillas of Destiny were there.
3 of the current bloodline were
practically all of the top guys from All In and AEW, but also so longevity,
Cody,
what it created, Cody, of course, that whole thing.
The Ring of Honor, it touched upon TNA, it touched upon AEW.
Yeah, AEW in terms of its formation, and then since then, like with
the Elite,
with Jay White
Bullet
taking
Club
over,
Gold,
Jay White coming across, Bullet Club Gold, and Bang Bang Gang.
Now we have the War Dogs, with our boy Drilla Maloney.
Yeah, and they're to me really kind of helping invigorate the mid card of New Japan, which had been stale for a long time.
Like Dave Finlay has done a good job considering how much it sucked.
I think turnover has happened.
Yeah, like I think, but for me, Bullet Club lost all its spice when Evil got involved.
Well, yeah.
And that was obviously when AEW.
It was Jay White was stuck outside the country.
Yeah, well, this is it.
And they pushed Evil as the top star of it. But I thought they kind of had an interesting dynamic when Jay White could get back in Japan after
the leader conflict.
But once Jay White left, to me, I was like, it's kind of a dead faction. But the War Dogs sub-faction of the faction have reinvigorated a lot.
Team music, unbelievable. It's created competition in wrestling again. Yeah. It's done in like
the merchandise alone.
You could write the merchandise, but you could write a book about this, like this formation. It's funny that it's an Irish guy.
I know,
who was there for it all, but like that formation has created the land. Like this wrestling is, you cannot compare it to 2015 when Bullet Club started,
and it made a lot of uninteresting people interesting. Also, like Machine Gun Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, what would they be without the Bullet Club?
I also think what I always find kind of sad about it, and this was the first 2 years or so of AEW, like you could kind of see what their big stroke storytelling was, and it was all big stories and epic stories and kind of like reinventions of classic angles. And I was like, at some point, I was like, the obvious angle for them to do, because like Bullet Club kick-started so much of that revolution. Bullet Club t-shirts were like, all those stories about Vince McMahon being told about like the hot selling wrestling t-shirt in America, and he's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah,
like
a guy too sweet me in Cork City in 2016, so I was wearing a Bullet Club t-shirt.
Yeah, it was a cool t-shirt to wear.
Yeah. So cool,
the point at which I started to really question Tony Khan and AEW and the booking, where I started to go, oh god, these guys don't have the juice in the way that I thought. I thought like some of the end game, like 3 years maybe into AEW, would have been like Bullet Club invasion. They do it. They've got
Proper
they've got
Bullet
so
Club,
many.
yeah.
You're bringing over Kenta.
Like if you want to do your modern riff of the NWO story, which I really feel AEW could and should do, and have bottled it every chance. They bottled it with the Outcasts when they could have done a women's version of it, and then they bottled it when they brought in the Bullet Club, and it's like it's a sub faction. You know, like these guys should be NWO level and create that fucking impact. You've got this name that sold so much merch. Why would you not want to?
But you can't sell that name. You know what I mean? They don't own the Bullet Club stuff.
Yeah, they're the Bang Bang Gang now. But I mean, in the spirit of Forbidden Door, yeah, why would you not let the biggest fucking heel faction in Japanese wrestling history run roughshod in AEW
Yeah,
for
Jay
6
White.
months?
Jay White could stay the leader of
Jay White, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like
And then
the Bucks are there, Kenny's there. Like, there's a lot of guys to pay off.
Jay White lost his loser leaves town match in Japan against Eddie Kingston. He had to leave New Japan. His thing could have been, I left Japan. I didn't leave the Bullet Club.
Yeah, and I thought they were going.
Or like have a big turn. Have Mox as the leader of the Bullet
When
Club.
Bullet Club Gold started off, I was like, oh, they're doing it now. They're finally starting to do it. I was like, no, these are a trios team.
It's just
That's it. No one's been added in.
Drop the name now.
None of the real life histories have been brought up or alluded to. Not much crossover on screen. Bullet Club in the impact they should have had for a run in American wrestling as a Japanese gimmick
And-
should have been massive, and it's been completely squandered.
And the
by
Guns could have gone in the opposite direction and done a few tours of excursion in Japan. And it would have done them untold good, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I really think there was some money, and when you've got the legitimacy of Bullet Club,
You have
I
the
feel
real
like
Bullet
it's
Club.
kind
and
of been squandered.
you're promoting blood and guts matches. And
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe Triple M. I hope he does, because if we're talking about like any of these dormant factions been rejuvenated, I think you could still do massive business in the modern day if you get a good new version of a new World Order angle going.
has say someone like Finn Balor now with the Judgment Day, because for a while you always associate him with the Bullet Club, but has he outgrown, say, the Bullet Club kind of say? Even like that's nearly 15 years ago.
The
like.
Bullet Club Finn was in, and the Bullet
10
Club
years ago, whatever.
that Kenny took over from AJ were quite different. Like
Dave Finley's still the leader, right?
Yeah.
like New Japan hadn't really got into the US zeitgeist in the same way it had when Kenny was the world champ. Like Finn they were kind of a crew of like rough shots who were just
Tour the IRA in Japan.
Exactly, just like attacking lads, just kind of, but not really. Like
Finn used to wear an Irish jersey with a balaclava on.
yeah,
Like Finn didn't win the
No, he won the junior. He won the
but
junior
he didn't win the
title.
he had, a
IWGP
big,
title.
he had one big shot and he lost it.
So they weren't the main event faction until say AJ came in.
AJ
And won
came
it.
in and won it, but he had a very short run as world champion there.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
it helped build up Kenny.
It did, but it was Kenny that really became established as the top heel, and then later the top face of.
Because it's kind of mad that like Bullet Club's only just about 10 years old. Like it seems way long.
11 years old?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it seems way long.
I mean, that's a great run for any faction. I mean, you compare to the original runs of some of the factions that we've talked about. Like
Our Foundation.
Our Foundation had a couple of months, The original incarnation of the Four Horsemen was probably about 1 to 2 years, was it?
So 4 years really,
But
but
longevity and the length, I don't think, should dictate how. Like, obviously, it can be a factor when it's done right, but I don't think it should dictate, greatest factions. And
Well, we've covered a lot. Like
the one
6 months for Dangerous Alliance versus 10 years for
New Day and
New Day,
Bullet.
yeah.
Yeah,
10 years-
but the
yeah,
one that
New
I'm
Day.
about to say, which is my number one, probably should have got the bullet in the head a lot sooner than it did.
definitely
The Un-Americans.
they should have got bullet in the head day one.
Yeah.
We the people.
And this was your first pick.
What
No,
a
Test.
catchphrase.
No, I'm talking about Test, Landstorm, Christian, William Regal. The Un-Americans.
It's actually you're going for. I will say that they were very
He's not
underrated
going for
and were a fantastic faction. at the
Don't
time.
feed in. Don't
I
feed
like
into
all
bullshit.
those people.
I know. Yeah, they were great.
Yeah,
Especially
it wasn't
Test.
a great gimmick, but they were a
Test
good
should-
foursome.
They came out with an American flag
Do
upside
you know what?
down.
You know what they should have really ran with? They should have done a properly Canadian Four Horsemen gimmick.
That'd be cool.
Well, they get one English dude, but still, like you know
Yeah.
what I mean. I would have much rather see those lads in suits.
What's the
what-
Canadian version of a horse?
Moose.
Moose.
The Canadian
man?
Moose Men.
Yeah.
The four Moose Men.
Mounties.
or the League of Nations with Wade Barrett, Sheamus.
That was a gimmick in like
Rusev.
a WWE game that then got kind of brought to the main roster.
Yeah, I think so.
But
Well, no. The gimmick was like
it
a
was more
UK.
Ireland
Yeah.
and UK, right?
Yeah, and they brought back the European title, which I was like,
which
cool.
which would have been a great fucking gimmick for a faction.
I remember playing that game, going, these storylines are better.
Wade
than
Barrett,
WWE.
Sheamus, Mason Ryan,
Mason Ryan, Drew McIntyre.
McIntyre.
Yep.
Finley.
Was he in it? Yeah, he was.
Well,
William
no,
Regal.
no,
William Regal was the manager.
Regal and Finley as coaches. That would have been a
I
badass
don't
faction.
think they made the distinction between like Sheamus and like Ireland and the UK though. They like it was pretty much like the British kind of thing.
League of Nations sucked as well, man. That was such a bad gimmick.
But no, my number one faction is the NWO. You talked about them.
Speaking of Bullet Club, speaking of
life, they took the Four Horsemen. They took the Bullet Club symbol. You know, it's
They went into the future.
Or the Bullet Club.
They have the two suite. They have them all.
back to my point. Do you
DX, they're heavily crossed over with DX in terms of mates.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, like
it's the click. It's the click. DX, like my two picks are the click, basically. If you wanted to confine them into one.
Can I ask a question? Like as per when I was talking about the rebooting of Angles, as per my last email, the rebooting of Angles that worked. Do you feel that because we live in a world of like reboots and like franchises and like
Multiverses.
IP has been kind of like dragged back up in terms of resurrecting older wrestling gimmicks with new people. Obviously, the Y86 is a version of that now, which is really cool and seems
Which
to be
is
really well
all
so far.
coming from Whalen Mercy.
Honorable mention to the fucking Wyatts in general, but we don't know how that faction maybe didn't make the list. But I mean,
I
fantastic.
do. We
faction
have a
that's
whole
still
Bray
going.
Wyatt documentary. Go
There's
check
the whole
that
thing.
out.
But what I will say is like maybe the NWO as like IP that WWE own. Is there a version of that could work? Because
They brought back the LWO. Like when you think about
they brought back the LWO.
They need the
didn't they?
BWO. BWO was the best.
But
thing.
like,
Yeah,
is there a version of it where like within the fictionalized version of WWE corporate at the
course.
moment that Nick Khan or The Rock or someone decides Triple H is losing the run of himself. We're going to fucking bring in this
like
poison.
Inject a lethal dose of poison.
the only baby face that you could turn that has been like a career baby face that turn heel is Rey Mysterio. You know what I mean? Rey Mysterio is your Hulk Hogan because he's like
Well, I think
everyone
it's
has
not
turned
Cody,
and
no.
not turned. And,
I think if you're doing a
Cody.
new version of the NWO, you need to get like, you need to get like definitely get Nash on board, get Waltman on board, doing that kind of JJ Dillon type role.
Well, what if you finally pull the trigger on the Cody heel turn after you've signed the Young Bucks?
New World Order. I'd love to see it brought back and what it represents.
And they're-
You're talking about a faction that's there to basically poison the rest of the company and take it over.
Yeah,
perceived to be like,
no one will poison the company more than the Young Bucks.
And Cody.
Bring those fuckers in.
I do think in the modern era, the Elite are like, in terms of the people you'd put in there, probably one of the closest to a new version of the NWO.
100%, yeah.
Having them working with like having Nash and Waltman in the mix. There's probably some older NWO members that could be.
Horace
Stevie
Hogan.
Ray.
Scott Norton.
Who's Horace Hogan?
I think Scott Steiner would be a really good addition to them. And I just keep the lines clear of what they're supposed to represent. But yeah, poison that destroys an organization.
NXT coming up.
I think that it's soft if you do it that way.
If I was going to book a modern day version of the NWO,
Oh, you have TNA
I
there.
would start them in NXT as poison. I would treat them like the fucking White Walkers in Game of Thrones and start them mashing
The
through
slow
the
march of time.
NXT roster, destroying Shawn Michaels, ruining his fucking entire promotion down there, and then moving up to.
What about CM
main
Punk
roster.
as the leader of
I think that'd be a great show.
NWO?
And I think it would be quite appropriate to go against Triple H from a
Yeah.
corporate standpoint. I think there's a lot to do with the story. Obviously, it's a cheap way to reboot some IP, but I think a new version of the NWO where they're really selective about the members and it feels really earned and has a good logical storyline.
the fact that you want to bring back a new version of the NWO and talking about the IP, and we talked about the influences that they've had on the Bullet Club and
DX.
like we've talked about the NWO a lot in this episode, will go to show why I think they're the number one faction of all time. Like I grew up, I was not allowed to watch WWE at home, so I went up to my nan's house Friday night, watched Nitro after Cartoon Network changed over. So I seen the whole NWO like
That was the
infancy.
same. That was when I got into WCW. I was looking at bits and pieces of it, but I was never mad interested.
By the time I started
hooked.
watching regularly, NWO were already in. Like I didn't get in for Hogan's time.
No, but I grew up with like Hulk Hogan. Like it felt like he slapped me in the face personally. Like I used to think because my nan's maiden name is Hogan that I was somewhat related to Hulk Hogan. I was like I loved Hulk Hogan. I had a massive Hulk Hogan poster on my
nan's name
wall.
was,
You are quite
was
like-
Bollet, so I thought I was.
Mine
related
was
to-
Benoit. Oh shit.
Johnny Kane. But like what the NWO was, the outsiders coming over. I know you said that they took influence from Japan, but obviously there was an
invasion.
NWO Japan. You had the LWO. You had
NWO
the-
Japan was legit.
Yeah, Masahiro
Massive
Chono.
Chono, yeah. You had the LWO. You had ECW doing BWO.
Yeah.
You know, you've the T-shirts, the merchandise in itself is still iconic.
Shout out to Les Barsby World Order as well.
It also
on the
influenced
rounds.
what DX ended up doing in terms of like Vince was pushing DX in a big way because NWO
NWO was doing
well.
it.
Yeah.
They're both versions. They're both click factions.
Yeah.
And they, like, for better or for worse, they kind of brought in this whole tweener kind of.
The cool heel.
Yeah, the cool heel, yeah, you know, for better or worse.
And
but
tribalism in
but
wrestling.
like at the time, it was so new, you know. At the like, and then eventually they start going NWO Silver, and you have
red
Jeff
and
Jarrett,
black. Wolfpack,
and
baby.
I like the Wolfpack. though,
NWO
when I was a kid.
2000.
Sting should never have been in the NWO.
No,
he's the one guy who should never have been.
He was okay as red and black though.
So yeah, we were talking about this in the fucking group, and you brought it up, and I denied it, but you were absolutely right. Ric Flair joined the NWO when the short-lived and very badly executed WWE incarnation
But
of NWO.
that's coming off another faction that was so bad as well when you had the Alliance.
Oh, that was
you had
disaster.
that should have been like an NWO type faction.
Exactly, and the NWO could have been a part of that because they only came in a few months
We're going
later.
to do a rebooking the Alliance episode.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
going to be like a 4-hour one. Sorry, Matthew.
The invasion.
But the NWO for the, you know, they helped get Goldberg over. They were full of legitimate people. They helped DDP get over.
Great feud with the Horsemen.
Helped Sting's transition.
Jay Leno.
Jay Leno, Dennis Rodman.
Rodman
he became
Rodman did very well there. We did an episode on that too. Rodman did do well there.
like the giant was. You got him smoking cigarettes.
Like the thing
Jay Leno. Remember Jay Leno pulling off that burning hammer?
the burning hammer.
From a ladder, I think it was.
Like if we all know the problem with the NWO is that it outstayed its welcome and it consumed the product.
Literally poisoned it.
It poisoned it.
And
Did poison the
lazy
product.
employees who just didn't give a fuck.
Yeah, and Bischoff becoming
Like
the
Virgil
leader
would
of
just been like, I'm in the NWO.
like Bischoff the Booker became the main character.
It was fucked, and then when like who is representing WCW, and then when you got like
Michael Wall
Sting
Street
and
legally.
Flair kind of like grand, and also it lost its original intention as well. I remember like
just WWF
I remember
then.
as a kid watching it, and you know I'm still a bit kayfabe sensitive. I don't know exactly what the truth is, but I remember as a kid going, oh, like all these ex-WWE guys now are going to be taking over WCW. So like I was like, Yokozuna can come in, and like Kama's going to come in, and maybe
I know that's not real, but
Maybe
this is
Mabel's
real.
going to come in, and then when you see them, and I was like, oh,
Mabel was
DiBiase's with him, and then Savage is with him, and then when it's like once it was the fucking
four
Big
guys.
Show, like the Giant, I was going, what are they doing here?
He's Andre's son.
I mean, maybe he's Andre's son. Is that what it is? And I thought-
there's Horace Hogan. Okay.
I thought it really, really
now
worked
I'm
when
out.
they were just like bringing in ex-WWF guys.
Sean Waltman.
Basically,
Like-
Sean Waltman was excellent.
It should have ended with Sting beating Hogan at Starrcade.
Yeah. That should
That's
be
the
the
natural
end of the
endpoint.
first chapter. Park it for a year, lads. Then maybe we'll resurrect.
Yeah, exactly. Because it would have, if you had ended it there and you have a normal
Good
year,
defeated evil.
Good defeated
It
evil.
took 2 years, but the NWO takeover was repelled.
Yeah,
End of
and
story.
you have
Sting's champion.
a normal year of wrestling booking,
Yeah.
and then maybe somewhere down the line there's something starting to
to-
Then
bubble.
how-
Cut to
No,
after
this
show
is what you
credits
do.
and some.
This is what you do, right? Bret Hart comes out, he helps Sting to finally defeat the NWO, and then Bret Hart gets too big for his boots, brings
that's
in the Hart
immediately when you bring in the Hart Foundation.
and that's
Yeah.
when the NWO come back to go against the
Yeah,
Hart
and then
Foundation.
you can bring in Jericho, you can bring in Ben Waters, you can bring in a few other Hart. Oh, fucking Ben Waters. You can bring down Bruce Hart if you want to have a fucking bit of a
Benoit.
laugh.
Yeah,
you
true,
know.
yeah.
But you know, like Harry Smith, TJ Wilson were starting to wrestle around that time as well. Teddy Hart for what it's worth. But you could have definitely created a new version of the Hart Foundation to plug that gap for a while.
Yeah.
And NWO could have come back a lot fresher.
Yeah.
And not having to need
and
Disco
the
Inferno in
company
there.
may not have died.
What, like Disco
Disco
Inferno, they go,
fucking
oh,
Inferno.
who should we put in NWO? Well, Disco Inferno.
Yeah, why not? Glenn Gilberti, huh?
Like they had the B team and everything. Like
Yeah,
But what I hated then is like this whole like TNA tried to run an NWO angle, not just the failed one in 2002 in WWE. TNA tried to do it with the band, and then they tried to do it with almost Immortal. Does anyone remember them in 2000?
Yeah.
Main Event Mafia.
Well, no, Main Event Mafia was different, and that was really cool.
That was a
because
pretty solid gimmick.
I
yeah.
like that.
That was
I
kind
like
of a
that.
riff on that that kind of fucked up WCW New Blood
Millionaires Club.
angle, which was
It was better. It was a better version of that.
which was good, but the Millionaires Club were the baby faces. So you're like,
this is
why
the problem.
they should
What
be
the
the
fuck's
heels?
going on there?
you
Like?
know?
heels, yeah.
Why are the New Blood the bad guys?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So out of those, how many did we pick? 12 tag teams?
Yeah. Factions.
If we were to pick, if I was to pick one of mine, you were to pick one of yours to go on the
Mount
Rushmore. I'm going. We're probably all going with our number one pick, but then we'll all have to agree. Maybe. Oh no, sure. There's four of us. So
What would be the fourth of the four heads of Mount Rushmore?
NWO.
I think NWO are on it, no doubt.
Yeah.
For me, NWO are definitely on it.
They're definitely on it. I think 4 Horsemen are on it.
I think 4 Horsemen are on it.
Horsemen agreed.
I think.
Bullet Club. I don't know.
Bullet Club or DX?
Bullet Club.
I go Bullet Club.
I go Bullet Club over DX.
I would also go Bullet Club
Okay.
over DX for like modern. And what would be fourth? Good DX.
Heart Foundation?
Heart
You're going with Heart Foundation?
I've Heart Foundation
Heart
over
Foundation
DX.
would definitely be on mine, yeah.
I'd put DX over Heart Foundation, but this is...
I'd probably, even though I never liked DX, I think they're more influential than Heart Foundation in wrestling. I don't know, but I love Heart Foundation. So
See, Heart Foundation are definitely more entertaining to me.
they're more
now as an
real.
adult.
Yeah, as an adult,
and they
definitely.
were to me as a child.
Yes.
Like, they
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
were.
Corporate Ministry.
No.
Don't I just put the oddities
I'm going
up
to
there?
put, can we do the 4 Horse?
Can I just say I was a big I genuinely was nearly going to put down the oddities just because I wanted to talk about the oddities, but I think the oddities was a fantastic gimmick. It just
Great gimmick.
I put
If you had Doink.
I put Nation of Dawn.
If it was led by Evil Doink, that honestly would have been in 1990
A mad circus act.
I put
Dark Circus for
Or
the Freak Show.
Kizarny.
He would have fitted into it really nicely. Anyway, that's a lost gimmick of mine that I think would have really worked.
No bloodline.
Yeah, no,
We
but or
haven't mentioned the
Shield.
Shield.
Or Shield.
Shield Bloodline. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Bloodline story is still going.
Yeah.
And in some ways, so is the Shield.
So is Bullet Club.
I love a good like novel fact. Like when I saw the Job Squad, I was like, oh, they're like
Job Squad's great.
a bunch of jobbers who were pissed off and they
I think-
get together. That's a great gimmick. That's unique.
I
really
loved
smart.
it, and they had the kind of NWO T-shirt as well.
Yeah.
But I really love factions. I think AEW has too many of them that don't matter.
Yeah.
As long as you make
Are
it
the
matter.
elite?
Like,
Are the elite a faction?
Well,
They should be
I
adding- they should be adding
include them as
Bullet Club.
Yeah, so do I kind of, yeah.
That's the way I look at
I think they should lean into
Although
that
they
a bit more.
they probably really are though, aren't they?
Yeah, like the
Like the fact that they've gone on to
John-
their own iteration.
I know.
John,
yeah,
you
yeah.
get the final pick. The Quadruple Bypass, Mount Rushmore, 4 Horsemen, Bullet Club, NWO,
Heart Foundation.
Heart Foundation. There's your
Fuck
Mount
you, DX.
Rushmore from the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show, Quadruple Bypass. I've been an old buck. He's been an old buck. He's been Kenny Omega, and he's been our
Dunphy.
our hangman. I called you
Kieran
hangman.
Dunphy.
If you disagree with anything, if you agree with anything, don't forget to comment below. This has been Faction Wars on the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. See you next week.